Welcome to Real Talk, the unedited, scripted, unfiltered show where I sit down with a gaming personality and talk about anything and everything. Today's guest has been around the world of esports probably longer than anyone else. Starting back in the days of shoutcasting, Redeye grew to become a shoutcaster's shoutcaster. It was just announced today that he'll be returning to esports full-time after a little time away. We'll be getting to know his entire story as well as his thoughts on the news. Redeye, welcome to Real Talk, man.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thanks, JP.
So let's just go ahead and talk about the latest news, man. You've joined up with the ESL TV. So is this a big kind of return to full time for you in the world of esports for the third time now? For how many times have you kind of come back from the real world?
Geez. I don't know. I guess you could. I've never really been away, but I've had some time out every now and again, and I think this year's been really busy, obviously, but probably 10 and 11 were pretty quiet in terms of esports. I kept my hand in with a few tournaments, so yeah, I don't think I've ever really left, but it's in terms of being a full-time job, yeah, this is probably my third go round, so it's probably last chance to learn.
Now, how did the conversation start? Were there more contracts kind of on the table, or was it ESL that kind of specifically reached out to you?
Yeah, I mean, this year's been it's been a crazy year. I think by the end of the year, I've got 4 more events to do this year. So by the end of the year, I've done 21, and I think 21 is I think I added it up something like it's more than 2009, 10, and 11 put together. So it's been a massive year for me. Really, really busy. And that's obviously led, as you probably well know, JP, you know, you go off to these events and inevitably, if you do a good job, someone says, hey, you know, you'd be really great at this, and we're running a tournament, and you should come and do some stuff with us.
Right.
And that's pretty much how it used to work in the old day, and it's worked for me this year as well. So ESL and I started talking in probably January, February this year.
Oh, that far back.
I did Kiev with them. Things went really well. We had a great time. I loved working with the guys backstage. Great production crew, good people in the admin system. We didn't really sort of make any great plans back then, but then we did IEM World Championships, and that went really well as well. And then I sat down with both Carmack and with Sven, who is the CEO at Total TV, which is ESL TV. Mm-hmm. And they were, you know, keen to try and find a way of making it work. And, you know, we talked and we talked and we talked, and we didn't find a way of making it work then. And we've just carried on talking throughout the summer. Again, at Gamescom, I did, I think, WCS Germany with them as well. And we've just carried on talking. And then, you know, the offer came up actually well over a month ago now. So it's been a while, actually like 6 weeks ago. And yeah, there were a few other offers on the table. I don't want to tell you who because it'd be unfair, but yeah, there's been a few offers this year, and that's been very flattering. But ultimately, ESL came up with the right package for me, and you know, it had to be the right money. It had to be, without sounding mercenary, it had to be the right money. I'm on very good money right now with the job that I've got that I actually enjoy and I love doing. But it had to be interesting. It had to be challenging as well, and I didn't really want to just, you know, take any job and come back for the sake of coming back. I'm 40 now, so I have to be careful with how I choose things, and I have to think about my career and how long I've got left in a career, and all sorts of crazy things like retirement and stuff like that, which is really boring for young people. But I have to consider these things, and within that, I've got family, I've got young children, all my family and friends are here as well, so there was a lot of consideration, and it's taken probably too long as far as ESL are concerned to sort something out, but they've been very patient with me, and they've given me a fantastic deal, so yeah, it's all good.
Before we kind of jump into ESL a little bit more, I want to talk about your current gig. Is it Fresh Egg? Is that where you're currently employed?
Yeah. Yep.
So what is your role at that company?
So with Fresh Egg, they're a digital marketing agency. They've been around for about 11, 12 years now, and mainly in SEO, but then the last few years they've moved towards a full suite of digital marketing. And I joined them about 2.5 years ago. With the idea that I would begin starting to build them a social media product offering and build them a team, and that's basically what I've been doing for 2.5 years. So head of social media for a large UK digital agency, and we've got some amazing clients. I've had the privilege of working with some extraordinarily huge clients, people like GameStop in the past, more recently Comet, Vodafone, Maplin, some really, really big, big clients, and that's been fantastic. So, I've really enjoyed the job. I still enjoy the job. I'm going to give it all my all until I leave, and I sort of leave with a bit of sadness as well because there's some great people there, and I've had a really great time with them.
To flesh that out a little bit, a lot of people right now in our industry hear social media and they think, well, does he just control a Twitter, or what does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis? Because it has a lot to do with campaigns and whatnot, correct?
Yeah, no, really, I just fuck around with Facebook all day.
That's what he's paid for, guys. Now, what does it mean, Paul? What does it mean?
No, yeah, it is. It's a mixture of stuff. It's the technical side of stuff. So it's more about, for us in gaming, it's so weird because we kind of get it. We've been in social media right from the very beginning. I remember being on Facebook in '07 when it was first around, in terms of public, on Twitter in 2008. So, we kind of adopt stuff really early in gaming. So what I do for Fresh Egg to most gamers will seem like almost common sense. But to digital agencies and to the new companies that are coming into it and sort of waking up just now to the fact that social media can be really powerful for them as a digital marketing channel, that's what we're providing. We're providing the expertise, the knowledge, the training, support. But there's all sorts of crazy technical stuff. I mean, just go and have a look at Open Graph and look how detailed Open Graph is in Facebook. And Twitter are starting to use Open Graph and look at how it gets implemented on websites. And I could go around a ton of esports websites right now and just absolutely pull them apart in terms of how poor they are in terms of support. Users want to be able to share stuff they enjoy, so provide them with the right buttons. I mean, that's reasonable common sense, right? But you'll be amazed by how many websites out there don't provide a button at all, let alone provide it in the right place. So,
do you have any specific examples of that? Perhaps
I don't know.
ESL's website.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. They already know that I've already had a chat with them, about some of the failings on the ESL website. So that'll be one of the things I'll do. I mean, we start off with things like audits, and we'll go through the audit, and it will cover all the different social media properties, and it'll also look at things that maybe they haven't really looked at just yet. So things like Pinterest, for example, which aren't massively popular and well known, but they are massive traffic drivers to websites. And ultimately, what you're doing when you create great content is, great content on its own is fantastic, and Google will eventually come along and sweep it up and put it in the rankings, and it might rank somewhere. But without social media, you just don't reach enough people straight away. And what Google loves most is fresh content that is socially shared really, really heavily. So when you combine those two, it's really powerful. And if you get it right, oh my God. I mean, we've seen some phenomenal results using things like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. And yeah, it is a mixture of campaign stuff as well. So yeah, it's been... it's still fun, and the great thing about it is the role I get with ESL will encompass some of that. So that's fantastic.
Now, will the switch over to ESL, is that going to be an instant switch? Did you
No.
put in 2 weeks' notice? How long will you still be at Fresh Egg?
Do you know what? 2 weeks' notice would be amazing. I actually the role I have is head of social media for the company at Fresh Egg, and I report straight into one of the directors, who is one of the founders of the company. So I'm on a senior management level, and when you're at that kind of level, 3 months' notice is the absolute minimum. So that's what I've given. So it won't be until January. I think January 15th, I think, is my official start date, but I'll probably move out there early in January in Cologne.
Will you be doing any work prior to that for ESL? Hosting events and whatnot? Or wait, do they even have any events?
Yeah, well, they have Singapore coming up. I don't think so. I think we've spoken about it. I'm sorry for sounding a bit lame with this, but I hate almost saying it really, but I do have a guy. He's sort of like an agent, fixer, I call him. A guy called Corin, who really does sort me out, and I don't know what he does it for, because he never takes a fee, and he blooming well should do. But nevertheless, he sorts out all my gigs. There's currently 4 up in the air right now. I think I'm confirmed for Bucharest this coming weekend. I'm not even sure that's been announced, so I might have just slipped that one out. I'll be in Vegas in November for an event which I think it's public, but I don't think I've been announced yet publicly, so I'll keep that one quiet. But it's not what you think it is. And then there's a couple towards the end of November which I'm confirmed. One is Gadget Show in the UK, and what's the other one? Wow, my mind's gone blank. There is another one as well. So I've got 4 events. I don't think any of them will with the ESL, but we're very much talking about, what does the job role look like? How does it work? how can we bring the best benefit to ESL with my knowledge and my experience, as well as, really the thing is for me is being able to go and do what I love doing, which is commentating and hosting, and I've been able to combine that with a job that's in social media. So in many respects, it's almost like the perfect job.
Now, what is going to be your day-to-day at ESL? The title that they gave you is head of content and media, but it's kind of an all-encompassing title. So what will you actually be doing at the company?
You're right. It is one of those, like, and do you know, this is absolutely true. Okay, so I spoke to Ralph Reichart, who is one of the CEOs at Turtle Entertainment, and Sven, two men I get on very well with, and we share a lot of common goals, and I know that they really want to grow ESL and make it super successful. And we had a discussion for a few days about what was the job title, because they I mean, to be fair, they've created a job role for me, which is fantastic. And it I think it came down to some sort of phrase in German, and basically what it meant is boss of everyone, which was quite cool. I like that. That sounded cool to me. But
should have kept that title.
Yeah, but boss of everyone.
Yeah.
But it didn't make much sense in the grand scheme. I think it was something like editor in chief or something is what it directly translated to, which didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think we came up with head of content and media because it sort of does encompass a lot of what I'm going to be doing. So the detail is still being thrashed out. We haven't really defined absolutely what I'm going to be doing, but effectively head of everything that's content on ESL TV, sorting out their VOD system, sorting out how people enjoy the VODs and how they find stuff. You just look at the tagging right now, and the tagging's quite poor, so that kind of stuff. And also getting involved in the running and the administration of the social media across the group, so that we're really in top shape as far as social media is concerned. And then just generally looking after the commentators and helping bring them on, and hopefully impart some of my experience with them and help them grow to a new level as well. So yeah, it is an all-encompassing role. And then on top of that is the weekend work with hosting and obviously doing the majority of the hosting with ESL, IEM and what have you, whenever it's required in English. And then on top of that, I also get a chance to go and work in the studio with the likes of Joe and Kalaris, which is fantastic. There's a chance that I could end up doing my own show. There's certainly going to be some more Counter-Strike Go and probably a load of other games as well. So massively exciting for me. It's almost like I'm a kid in a candy store.
I heard the role of hosting, but I never heard the role of casting. Are you going to be doing any casting for ESL at all? Possibly for CSGO?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think Joe and I spoke a little bit about it today. No plans yet because it's so far off, and really, to be honest, and to be fair to Fresh Egg, I'm literally concentrating on Fresh Egg right now and just making sure that the staff that I look after in my department and the people that rely on me for support and training and what have you are still getting that right up to the moment that I leave. So I've not really spent a massive amount of time thinking about how does this all look. Because it's just too far away right now. But for sure, ESL will get my full attention once Christmas is done and the kids have had their presents and I'm off to Germany.
We've seen a lot of different casters kind of come and go at ESL with Too Good, Mr. Bitter, Rotterdam are kind of the three big names that come to mind. Do you have any idea why casters use ESL kind of a stepping stone to what appears to be for them to bigger and better, with Mr. Bitter and Rotterdam, of course, going to NASL, and then Too Good, of course, doing his own studio? Is there a reason why ESL's kind of always been that company where it seems to filter through people a lot quicker than some of these other companies out there?
I don't know. Without working with them, more I don't know. And it's certainly one of the things that will be on my radar in terms of sorting out and making sure that we don't that doesn't happen quite so often. And it will happen. It's an inevitability that it happens. Grass is always greener is sometimes the case. I've had enough of had enough tournaments experience and working with leagues to know that just sometimes if the face fits, then great. If it doesn't, then it doesn't, and it's time to move on. So I think there's a bit of everything. There's certainly nothing wrong with people being ambitious as well. And if there are problems internally, then that's going to be down to me to work with Sven and work with the rest of the guys at ESL TV to make sure that those things don't happen.
And kind of the final question is, and a little bit of credit goes to the Good Studio because they did bring this up on their show. The ESL brand, for lack of a better word, has been kind of stale past couple of years. You know, they do their events and they do them very well, but they haven't really changed much. It's still the same formula that they've been using for the most part the past couple of years. Never really stepping outside of the box, I guess, is the best way to put it. First off, do you agree with that statement? And second, do you think a single person can change it?
No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think I know where you're coming from, and I think they found a standard, which actually at the time was probably a decent standard and probably actually ahead of most broadcasters. They certainly took it to another level maybe 2 years ago. Have they stayed there? I'm not so sure they have. I think they've improved in other areas. I just don't think it's always quite as obvious. I think if you look at the people backstage, you look at the fact that they had almost 200 people on the crew at Intel Extreme Masters. And you look at the kind of delivery that they did in terms of broadcasting, how slick it was. You know, that's fantastic, and you can't take that away from them. Could they improve in areas? Yeah, definitely, for sure, and they know that too. Can one man change them? No, I don't think he can, and I don't think it'd be reasonable to expect me to go in there and try and help do that. But I think it would be reasonable to expect me to have input on that, and I know they want that. I know that they're very open to listening, and hopefully that I can go in there and, part of my role is to influence other people into the way that I think it should be done if we can make improvements. And, I don't see why that would be a particular problem. I think, can they do things like replays? Yeah, definitely. We definitely need to get replays in there. Can we deliver the commentary better? Yeah, we can definitely tell more stories. Could we do the hosting better? Yep, we can do that better because the camera work needs to be better. Yep, all needs to be better. But I think what you need to also remember is that most of the guys that work on these are not traditional TV people. They are people that have gone in at the ground floor on esports and have built themselves up and do a tremendous job for the level of experience that they've got. So, it's about raising the whole bar for everything across the board. And it's not just ESL, that's across esports. And I don't think there's anyone right now doing it absolutely flawlessly and perfectly as you would expect, say, a BBC or a CBS or an ABC to come in and do it. So, yeah, we're still learning on the job.
I lied. I have one more question about that.
Liar.
What is the worst thing that ESL does right now to get you to talk shit on your new company?
Yeah, you're gonna try and get me sacked before I even start. The worst thing they do? Wow.
That's not a good phrase to start.
I don't know. I don't really know them well enough. I mean, that's me being absolutely honest. I've worked with them 4 or 5 times this year, and every time I've worked with them, I've worked with a number of admins who do a phenomenal job with the gamers and the way that they organise the tournaments. I've worked with some of the administration and HR people who, again, have been extraordinarily nice and very, very efficient. I think probably the weakest thing would be organisation. I think just in terms of being organised, as it were. And that's just me looking at it from the outside. I don't know whether that's true, and I won't find that out until I get my feet under the table and see what's going on.
All right. Well, we will be excited to see what goes down over at ESL in January when you officially start there. So let's kind of jump now to your personal story, as we often do here in Real Talk. Go back 40 or 50 years to the start of it all. I had to get in one age joke, Paul. I had to get in one joke.
You'll be cracking short jokes next.
There you go. All right, Paul. Where were you born, man?
I was born in a little town called Shoreham-by-Sea, which is right on the south coast of England.
What did your parents do while growing up? For work.
Actually, that's quite interesting.
Yeah,
no, it genuinely is quite interesting. My dad, when I was born, I think he was a manager of a supermarket, so Tesco's, which is a big brand over here.
Okay.
My mum, I don't know actually what my mum did when I was born. But a few years afterwards, she was. I think she worked at Tesco's as well. I think they both worked at Tesco's together for a while. Maybe it was one of those checkout love stories. Yeah, she definitely worked at Tesco. But then later on, she went and worked for a company called Allied Carpets. It's a very boring carpet company. But she was going through the 70s, and the 70s in England was very chauvinistic. We were very male-dominated. Very few women were in highly powerful positions. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we had Maggie Thatcher come to be the Prime Minister in the late 70s. And at the same time, my mum was actually made a manager of one of the Allied Carpet stores. She was given her own store, and it was almost unheard of. I think she was probably the first female manager in the entire company, in the entire country. And the Odd thing is this. When I was born, my dad was the manager at Tesco's, and they were given a little company called Victor Value. And he had to go in there and basically turn it into a Tesco's. So it was a really tough job to do. Now, the building he did that is in Worthing, okay? And it's no longer Victor Value. It went to become Tesco's. 9 years later, it became Allied Carpets, and my mum managed the store. So my dad had managed the store originally as a Tesco's. My mum then managed it as an Allied Carpets. That building, and this will sound really fucked up now, but that building today is Fresh Eggs HQ, and I'm now a manager in that store.
That's a little bit weird.
Wow. Freaky.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Wow. What do they do? Do they kind of share in your enjoyment of digital media, or?
No, mixed bag. Actually, they're a lot younger than me. So I was an only child from my mum and dad's relationship. My mum and dad split up when I was about 5 or 6, I think. And then they both remarried, and they both had a boy in the same year. So both my brothers are 31, which is pretty weird. But they're both from different parents. So I have Rob, who is he's a good guy. He loves games, gets involved. He has a child now as well. He's getting him involved in. I think he's trying to turn him into a pro gamer, actually. And I have Ian, and Ian and I fight like cat and dog. And we've spoken for about 18 months. And we grew up with my mum, and I have 2 sisters who are both on my dad's side, one of which is Nikki, who lives in Northern Ireland, which I'm very close to, and the other one is Melissa, who, funnily enough, lives locally, but we just don't see each other. There's nothing wrong with us, but we just don't see each other. I don't know why. We just don't. That's how it is, just a general English family.
What was school like for you, kind of growing up?
School was a bit weird, actually. I have some really weird memories from early on where I had a fictitious horse. Most people have a fictitious friend. I had a fictitious horse. I don't know why.
Tell me you didn't ride it. Tell me it was just a horse that walks next to
you. I would go to school.
God damn it, Paul.
I'd tie him up outside. We used to have those ranch-style outdoor prefab school huts, and they would have these, the wooden sideboards on them, and I'd tie them up, and I'd leave him out there, and he'd be fine, and then I'd come out after school, and he'd still be there. It was great. Yeah, I was pretty daft. So I had a very checkered early school career, because my mum and dad split up pretty early. So I think I stayed with my nan for a while, and I don't think I changed school. But then I went and stayed with my aunt for a while, and I did change school, and that was a pretty rough school in the middle of Brighton. For anyone who knows Brighton, Whitehawk, it's a rough area. And to stop getting bullied, I told everyone that I did karate, which worked really well. And no one came near me. I just did a karate chop on one guy across the neck, and he told a teacher. And no one ever came near me ever again. And I to this day, I've never touched. I don't even know karate. So I pulled that one off. That was brain over brawn, I think. Yeah, and then from there, I went to several schools through my middle years, and then eventually my mum settled down with a new guy, my stepfather Doug. And then things sort of settled down a bit, and it was a lot easier, and pretty ordinary sort of school, really. I ducked out of lessons now and again, smoked behind the bike sheds, got off with the wrong girls, didn't get a PhD in LSD, but definitely did some things that I probably shouldn't have done early on. Yeah.
Would you consider yourself a good student by what you just described?
No.
I don't even think that.
No, we have the equivalent of what are called GCSEs over here, and I think I was up for 10 originally, and by the final year when we came to do our exams, I'd only got 6 left. So in other words, they kicked me out of 4 lessons, and I had those 6 to take, and I luckily passed all 6. I have no idea how to this day. Swear to God, I have no idea how I got 6 grades. The 6th one of that was so lucky as well. It was a science exam, and on the morning of the exam, I decided I was going to study, and I flicked the textbook open, and it was the life cycle of the frog, and it was all dissecting the frog and talking about amphibians and what have you. And then I go into the test, and there's 3 choices for the questions, and one of them is the life cycle of the frog.
Nice.
And I scraped a C, so it just goes to show, kids, don't bother learning.
There you go.
Just swat up on the morning. No, I'm joking. Just make sure you do it properly.
What kind of clique were you a part of? I initially was gonna say that you were just part of the nerd clique, like everyone else in esports, but it sounds like you were kind of the rough and tough guy.
No, definitely not. I was definitely one of the middle guy. I tried to stay out of trouble. I didn't mix it with the big guys. I didn't pick on any of the little guys. Definitely a nerd. Absolutely 100% bona fide nerd. I got in with a couple of guys. One was called Dan, who I'm still friends with. I had a Chinese with him earlier this evening, actually. We've been friends now for well over 30 years. Another guy called Rich. And they were both just, ordinary guys like me. We just, I don't know, enjoyed the things we enjoyed. I would set up multiplayer Grand Prix 1 multiplayer games, which was not the multiplayer you and I know now, but actually you had 2 laps, and then the computer took over for 5 seconds, and then you jumped in the seat, and then you got control in 5 seconds, and you drove your 2 laps during the Grand Prix, and it worked out roughly where you'd raced before, how quick you would be for the next 2 laps while the computer drove your car, and sometimes it would spin your car off, and it was infuriating. But we would do that on the Amiga and on the ST, and play games like that. And do you know what? It's funny. Rich even said to me recently, you know what? I've realised now. You used to commentate those games back then. You should have totally realised earlier than you did that commentary was definitely what you were good at. And he's right in a way. When I think back, we were 14, 15 when we were doing that. And yeah, he was right. I was doing silly shit like going into the town and going into our electronics store and writing 10, I rock, you suck, this guy's a wanker, and then 20, go to 10, and then hitting return, and then watching it scroll down the page of the TV, and then watching the sales guy come over and go, oh crap, how do I stop this? And trying to press the buttons on the Spectrum and figure out, he just couldn't do it. It was hilarious. And that was the height of our power, really, as far as nerding was concerned. But I played lots of sports as well. I played football at a reasonable level, badminton, ice hockey, I don't know, pool, snooker, yeah, just loads of it. I was into so many different things, and obviously the Formula One bug got me really, really early as well. So, yeah, fairly just ordinary upbringing, really.
Did you excel at any of the sports that you took part in, or was it just kind of mediocre? You just playing to play to have fun, not really super competitive at them?
Oh, no, actually the opposite. I was massively competitive, and I still am. Even with my kids now, we went bowling at the weekend, and I'm still competitive, and I have to kind of go, whoa, hold on, look, one of these kids is 5. What the hell are you doing? So no, I've always been massively competitive. I think the problem for me was that I remember a friend actually telling me, and he said, you're infuriatingly good at almost everything you do. And I replied with, yeah, but you're phenomenal at running, and I'm just average at everything. I can put my hand to most things. I played badminton at a county level. I played pool at a reasonable national level. I played snooker at a decent level, won some tournaments. I played football at a non-league, but paid to play for a little bit. But I'd never excelled at any one thing, and that frustrated me a lot. But I think as I've got older, I've sort of learned to appreciate that actually being jack of all trades and master of none is probably a decent blessing too. But I'd love to have excelled at just one thing,
Yeah. In terms of games that you kind of grew up on, what were some of the first that you kind of took part in? And did you also have a favorite kind of from that era?
Jesus, the first game I actually played was a game called Donkey King. Everyone else out there is going, Donkey King? And I'm like, yeah, Donkey King. Basically, it was a complete and utter rip-off of Donkey Kong. And it was by a company called Microdeal, and they brought it out for the Dragon 32. And my stepfather had gone out and bought a Dragon 32. And the first game we got was Donkey King. And they renamed it a little later on to The King because I think they got sued or something. But yeah, so I grew up on Donkey King. That was what I played. And then we got a few other games after that. And then I was in the arcade and sort of grew up around things like International Karate, 3D Racer, a bit of Space Invaders, obviously, a bit of Pac-Man, bit of Donkey Kong. Yeah, really, really old school stuff that all sort of kicked off in the early 80s. And then just sort of spread on to other games. I think The Hobbit on the Spectrum 32 was the first adventure game I ever played, and I was absolutely hooked. I thought this thing was amazing. Realistic graphics. uh, and then just sort of, I think I started work in 88, and that allowed me to have money, which then meant that I could go out and buy the computer that I wanted to buy, and I went out and bought an Amiga, and I played Revs, and I played, wow, Sensible World of Soccer, and just a whole heap of games. I mean, I spent a fortune on it. I really did.
What did you do for work kind of before the, I guess, beginning of 2000, when kind of CS and Quake and all those games started coming out? What was your line of work?
Actually, what I'm qualified in is finance and law. Boring. And I worked for 5 years at American Express. I had 3 or 4 years at Prudential, another financial institution, and then I had 8 years at Legal and General as a compliance manager. So that's pretty much what I was doing around the time sort of Quake and Unreal Tournament came out at the late 90s.
Now, what was the first competitive FPS? And I say specifically competitive FPS because that's kind of what you, I guess, kind of cut your teeth on. That's what you made a name for yourself on. So what was the first competitive FPS that you actually played?
Actually, Quake, the original Quake.
The original.
And yeah, absolutely. And first multiplayer would have been Quake World. So, same game, but the World client, which allowed you to play multiplayer online. And I remember playing it on, I was on, I think, a 28K modem, had about a 400 ping, and I still rocked. It was weird. And I say that with all due respect to the people I played, but I rocked. And I rarely got beaten on a deathmatch server. Very rarely. And then this dude came along. He didn't go by the same name back then, but it was Sujoy Roy. And he had a ridiculously low ping. I'm not even kidding you. And it turned out that he was at Cambridge, and they had a university connection. And it was, one of the world's first fiber cable, whatever the freaking thing was.
Yeah, T1 or something like that.
Yeah. He just absolutely rolled everyone. And, I was just so jealous. And it was about the same sort of time that we were... I didn't see any of it because we didn't have streaming back then. We didn't have audio. But it was about 96, 97 that I became aware of Thresh, and saw that he was winning a Red Ferrari and was winning all these tournaments, and just thought, wow, this thing's cool. You can now play. Not only can you play online, but you can now play at places against other players who are really good. I really want to do that, but I didn't get a chance to do that until about 99, maybe 2000 with Unreal Tournament.
What is it about kind of competitive FPS as well as just competitive games in general that keeps you around? What drives you to play them?
The competition is the main thing. I think when it started off with games in the 80s and the 90s, it was very much about how do I beat the computer? How do I if I have to cheat, how do I cheat? I'm not ashamed of saying that, I played Duke Nukem 3D and I tried to hack my way through the game as fast as I could. Because that was what you were up against. You were up against the computer. You were up against zeros and ones. Who cared if you cheated? Online, obviously, I don't condone cheating online, and I don't want to see it at all. But I think as competitive players, you always look for the edge. So, the borderline becomes a lot grayer about what cheating is. Is it that you take advantage of a glitch in a map? Is it that you hide behind a particular box and actually that makes you... you can see them, but they can't see you. That's happened in other games. I remember Quake 4, you could crouch and they couldn't see you behind stuff, and you could still see them. Same in Counter-Strike, actually, at one point. So, that's the sideline. But it was the competition mainly that made me go. I was very competitive in sport, and actually, this is an absolute true story now. The reason that I really got involved in competitive gaming was because in the early 2000s, my girlfriend at the time, Sarah, who I was with for about 13 years and have 2 children with, she had an accident and it paralyzed her down her left side, and she was in hospital for about 11 months in all at the start, and she's still having treatment now, 10 years on, 11, 12 years on, and because of that, it changed my whole life. It changed me changed me as a person. It changed what my life was about. Suddenly, I'd gone from being, a dad and a provider and a partner, and that was my job. And I suddenly had to be a mum and a homemaker and look after my children and know what they had in their packed lunch and change their bums with nappies and make them food that they liked and watch the things on telly that they liked and read them stories at night that I didn't get a chance to do, obviously, when I was working. That Sarah did all of these things for me. And that's a massive change of lifestyle. And what it also did was it meant that whenever I put the kids to bed in the evening, that was it. I was stuck. And so gaming became a bit of an outlet for me. It became something that I could still be competitive with. I could still play in a team, and I could still do something that I enjoyed doing. And that's, it pretty much, I hate saying, because it almost sounds cliche, but, gaming sort of saved me in a way from going mad. And I'm sort of very grateful for the fact that it came along and did that. And I think sometimes we forget that, how we got into stuff, and we sort of think back and reflect on that, and it's that you've just made me do that. And so I would say that was probably what drove me to playing more, and then it just snowballed from there. Really, I started to get better, started playing better tournaments, started to win tournaments. Clans started to win stuff, and then. And
what game was this in?
That was Unreal Tournament.
Okay. Would you say that was kind of where you? Because you have a longer history than most people in esports. Would you say that's where you really started out? Was kind of playing in these different leagues?
Yeah, definitely. It was. I played quite well for a couple of years. In fact, this will sound really odd now, but I actually played Command and Conquer a lot. I mean, massive amounts. And so it's odd that until this year I hadn't played an RTS in about 15 years. It just seemed like FPS was my thing. I found something I was really good at. I understood the logic behind it. I'm a very logical kind of person. I learnt the timings of all the different items. I learned how to use the weapons best, and I learned how to use them in the best situations on different maps. And I learned how to be in a team and how to call the strats and what have you. So it was just always something new to learn. And I suppose I'm one of those weird people. I think gamers in general are weird. Let me qualify that before you all start flagging me. In that we like change. Most human beings hate change. They hate things to they want things that are regular, stay the same, that they can rely on. Me, I love change. I love the challenge of change. And gaming gives me that in every way, because the games are always changing. They're always being updated. They're always having something added. There's always some sort of imbalance that you have to look up and try and counter. And that's part of the challenge for me. So, it just always challenged me, and it always made me go back and try it again and again and again. It was that one more game kind of syndrome. I'd get to 12 o'clock at midnight and think, I really ought to get a bit. I'll just have one more.
Kind of walk me through the multiple, I guess, events, because how many times have you kind of left esports and gone to a more traditional job to come back? Is it 2, 3?
I don't know. Let's walk it through. So, okay. So I did 2002 to 2005. I did pretty much in the evening, went to the odd event, played on LAN with my team, won a few trophies, won a few bits of money. And then in 2005, I got made redundant. And they paid me a year's salary to just not come back and not go and work for anyone else. And at the same time, I was just starting to do events with ITG, with Marcus and with Stuart. And I did a few of them that year. I think I may have done 8 or 9 events in that year, in 2005. And people started to enjoy what I was doing and give good feedback. And ITG wanted me to carry on doing their stuff with them. And we started working with GGL, and a couple of the guys at GGL were really keen on trying to get me on board full time. And I thought, wow, this could be a career. This could be something I could do that I love doing. And that didn't really pan out too well. And so at the end of 2006, I'd pretty much run out of money. And I have to tell you, at the time, I'd spent a year, maybe 18 months, paying to go to events. I mean, that's what we did back then. I paid £800 to fly out to Dallas to do QuakeCon. In 2005, I think. They gave us a hotel. We didn't earn any fee. We had to pay for our own food. And then we had to fly back. And
so it was basically volunteer status.
Yeah, pretty much volunteer. And obviously costing us quite a bit of money to go and do some of these tournaments. And the only exception for that year, I think, was WCG in Singapore, where we actually, I think I came home broken even, which was, that was a decent result back then. and that included the flight and hotel. So WCG were really good to us. But that really was the kind of turning year for me, because it showed me that I could do this. I went back to college. I learned broadcasting. I learned how to look into a camera. Learned some of the skills that I've now got. I picked up a massive amount of skills from people like Wheat and from Tosspot and from Loon and a number of other casters that I worked with and I had the privilege of working with in '05 and '06. But by the end of '06, I'd also used almost all of my girlfriend's savings as well, which meant that I just basically had to make a decision as to, do I try and carry on and get a full-time job, or do I go back to work? And luckily for me, CGS came along at the beginning of '07, so I didn't really leave. I didn't go back and have to find a new job. '07 and '08 were fine. '09, I ended up working with AVerMedia because CGS died, and that left me pretty broke. And AVerMedia sort of helped keep me in esports. So 2010 was really the first time I really left esport, or didn't leave, but just didn't do any events very much. Still managed to do WCG in 10 and 11. So I'd say this is probably the second time.
Okay.
I'd say it's probably the second time I've come back fully. Yeah.
What I'm trying to think here, because you just dropped a ton of information. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go from here.
Sorry, Jay. Me to talk slow.
What is it that keeps kind of, I guess, not bringing it back? Because you only came back twice, really. But what is it about that esports that, I mean, where does this drive come from? Because I mean, you basically said that you were kind of on volunteer status for a good portion of the time that you were just kind of talking about, even going into your girlfriend's savings. What is it about esports that makes it that important to you?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's a genuine passion for it. I genuinely love video game tournaments and video game matches. I mean, I can just sit here and watch someone play on a stream and enjoy it. I love the competitive side of it, but more than anything else, I love the stories. I love the players and the way that things evolve. And I'm always interested to see how this is going to pan out, the next one. Stefano wins WCS Europe, and it's amazing, and he's absolutely flawless all the way through the tournament. But you do get a chink of his armor missing at one point, and you think, hang on a minute, there's an edge to this guy that actually he can be beaten, even though he looks flawless for the whole tournament. So there's a story there, there's a sort of humanity about it, but there's a genuine battle against not just a computer and a game. That's just a tool, the instrument. But there's a genuine challenge against someone else. Can that person outwit them? Can they think better than them? Can they move faster? Can they micro faster? Can they macro faster? Can they outthink their player? Can they change their strategy halfway through? All of these things just make it massively exciting for me, and it's just intriguing watching it. And it almost doesn't matter what game it is sometimes for me. And I think that might be why I've done so many different games over the years. But I don't know. It just makes me keep coming back and again and again and again. And plus, there's always an element for me of unfinished business, until this esports does become massive. And I'm not saying it isn't massive right now. I think it's very big right now, and it's bigger than it's ever been. But until it's absolutely widely accepted by other people, and I don't get those questions of, really, gamers play professionally? That's absurd. And until those questions stop, I don't feel like I can stop trying to help it grow. So there's an element of, I've started this 10 years ago and I've got to see it through. It's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing love affair. And it's a love-hate relationship sometimes too.
Let's talk about your history with broadcasting. First off, how did you kind of get started? You mentioned that you went to school for it initially after kind of the ITG days. Was it ITG that started everything for you, or?
I actually I think, it's probably about 10 years ago this month or next month maybe, fell into it completely by mistake. God's honest truth. I had no ambition to be a broadcaster. In fact, I'm a semi-reasonable amateur photography enthusiast. I have a very expensive camera. And the idea behind that is that I stay this side of the lens, not the side of the lens I'm now on with you. Because I don't like having my picture taken. I don't like being on camera. I don't like being on video. And I know it sounds really odd now, because I do it for a job. So I never really had I had no intention of doing this whatsoever. 10 years ago. And then a guy called Yashman, who was a clan-based admin at the time, I think he was administering the Euro Cup that I was playing in, and he said, "Red, you're an English guy. You can talk English, and you play UT. You'd be great as a shoutcaster. You should do some shoutcasting." And I said, my words were, "What the fuck is shoutcasting?" And he said, "Oh, you know, like Wheat does and stuff." And I'm like, "Who the fuck is DJ Wheat?" And I had no idea. I really had no idea whatsoever. I'd never tuned in. I'd never seen anything. You know, as far as I was concerned, I had my own little IRC channel. I had a couple of hundred people in there that talked about Unreal Tournament, and that was my world. And I talked to a few people, and they helped me set it up, and I had a Winamp and Shoutcast 1.8.2 B plugin. That's how often I use that fucking thing. And set it all up. They gave me a server. I connected. I talked a load of shit. Flamed all the players. Told them they were crap and they were doing the wrong things. And I had 50 people on the channel, I think. And they loved it. They thought it was awesome. And I was like, okay, it's quite fun. It's quite good just to shit talk on my friends and my players and my friends. And then I kind of felt, actually, I ought to probably do it a bit better. And I just started listening to radio commentary for football, funnily enough. That's all I listened to. And I sort of picked up some of the little things that happened. The way they would describe things, the way they'd try and tell a story, and just improved, really. Just sort of self-helped. And did that for a couple of years. And then, funnily enough, TSN came to me and spoke to me in 2004 and said that they would like, I think they asked me to trial for them. And, you know, I'm like, trial for what exactly? You know, I don't want to do this. I just do it because I fucking like it. I don't care about TSN. Who the hell are you? And, you know, they were like, you know, fill this form out and send it off and you'll have to cast twice a week. And I was like, screw that. I don't want to do that. I just want to cast when I feel like casting. I want to go on air and get drunk and flame the players. And then Week came along in 2004 and made an approach and said that, you know, we've got this company, it's called ITG. We've only recently started out and we were with TSN and we've now split up and we're doing our own thing. And it was him and a guy, who's a guy? Well, Trance was involved in that, and who else was it?
Is it
Christ.
Evil Ed or something like that?
Nice Guy Ed was sort of involved because
Nice
he was
Guy
one of Marcus's. Yeah, Nice Guy Ed. There was a couple of other people, and Alison Suttles, who was, I sort of knew her because she was Doug Suttles' wife, and Doug used to be an old school. I think it was Quake 2, top player in Quake 2 actually. So I was sort of like, ooh, these guys are kind of cool. And the great thing, the reason I'm here and where I am right now, and it's totally down to Marcus, DJ Wheat, is because he said to me the exact words I wanted to hear, which were, we don't care how many times you cast each week. We don't care about filling out forms or taking trials. As far as I'm concerned, you're pretty good at what you do. You've got a great little community going, and we would like a European voice for ITG. And along with Tosspot and with a couple of other guys that we've got in Europe, we'd like you to come and join us. And I said, that sounds fine. What's in it for me? And he said, we'll give you a server, and you don't have to worry about buying a server for audio. And I thought, fuck yeah, that'll do. That's great. And we used to go to team meetings with ITG, and they used to be at 3 a.m. in the morning, our time. And, you know, slowly but surely I improved more. And then we went out to ESWC in 2005, and we did our first video event. And oh my God, I'm not kidding you, I was shitting myself is the only way I can describe it. And because I hadn't been told we were doing video, so I had no idea. I sat there going, oh, yeah, there's this camera over there. And I'm really uncomfortable, very self-conscious right now. And please stop looking at me in the crowd. I'd never sat in front of anyone. I'd done it in my bedroom. I'd done it from home. I'd done it on audio only. And this was completely foreign to me. And if I'm absolutely honest, I think I must have scraped through that because they asked me to come back and do some more events. But honest to God, I could look back on that now and just cringe because it was so bad. But Marcus must have seen something because he, you know, kept bringing me back to lands and I kept improving. And then when I got made redundant in the middle of that year, that's when I said, you know what, I'm actually going to try and do this properly. And local college were running a media course. It wasn't a degree or a diploma or anything like that. It was just a broadcasting course. And yeah, that helped me immensely. You know, if I hadn't done that and I hadn't had Wheat and Tosspot and all the rest of the great guys at ITG in 05, I don't think, well, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now. for sure.
So you basically kind of learned to broadcast prior to going to that school, basically in the moment. Like you didn't have any proper training or do anything kind of before that. It was all just done. It started out as kind of a fucking around type deal in the late night, and then it just turned into a gig after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Well,
I never had any inkling that I could even do this, let alone be good at it. And no idea.
what have been some of your favorite games or I guess series that you've kind of casted in terms of historic or memorable ones?
Wow. I hate those questions, JP.
Why is that? Because you have to quantify it.
Well, there's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, seriously, there are so many. And my brain kind of explodes trying to remember them all. And it's going to sound like a cop-out now if I don't answer it.
Well, you just say first one that comes to your mind.
Well, I think the first one that came to my mind was China, WCG Grand Finals, Counter-Strike 1.6. Was absolutely unbelievable. The final was incredible. And the reason I remember it more is because we had 3 lots of overtime. But because we were running so late, they then took the second map off the stage. And that's why I remember it. So that's not maybe a good memory. I did a tiny LAN in the UK in 2006 for Quake 4 called Covland 3. And we did it on audio because that's all we could get in the little hut that we'd hired. But we somehow managed to get some of the best players in Europe to that event. There was Strider, there was Wins, there was Too Good, there was DDK, Puri, just an amazing amount of fantastic players in Quake 4. And that weekend we had the most amazing thing happen. For those of you that don't know FPS or Quake 4 or TDM, Team Deathmatch, let me just explain that Team Deathmatch is 4v4 or 5v5 depending on which game you play. 4v4 in Quake 4, and you play to 20 minutes. And at the end of that, one of the teams has won. And that's how it works pretty much 9,999 times out of 10,000. And just occasionally you get one that ties, and it goes to overtime. And that's fucking insane. You know, you just kind of like, you guys have been playing for 20 minutes, 8 of you, hammer and tongs, going at it, and you somehow scored the same fucking points right on the buzzer, and you get 5 more minutes of overtime. So it won't shock you to realise that I remember this game because it went to 3 fucking overtimes. I mean, I've never seen anything in my entire life. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. You can probably find it. Covland, TDM final. It was 4 Kings versus Dignitas. So 2 of the biggest clans in the UK at the time as well. And a tiny little land in the middle of nowhere in Coventry. Insane. And so when you think of all the great lands and the big tournaments I've been to, and that one sticks out in my mind a lot. And then, amazingly, in the 1v1 final, I think it was Wins versus Ooze from Sweden. And that went to 3 lots of overtime in that one as well. And we were just like, what on earth is going on? Why is this tournament so nuts? And that's all we played, Quake 4 TDM and Quake 4 1v1. It's the only 2 finals we had for the whole weekend. So that was pretty crazy. I don't know. There's been, you know, so many phenomenal games over the years. But I think that probably sticks out really highly. And then the other one was, I think it was either 2007 or 2008. There was a LAN in Scandinavia. Fuck, I'm now really scratching my head. But there was a Swedish team there. What is it with Swedes? And there was a guy called Hellblinder who was playing AWP, and it was Counter-Strike Source. It was a really big tournament. I think it might have been something like The Experience, maybe, in 07 or 08. And these guys were pretty much underdogs for the whole weekend, and they played very games, and they were something like 14-1 down on Nuke at half-time, and they got absolutely, they were getting torn apart. And I think I said at half-time, well, these guys should just pack up and go home. They haven't got far to go either because they were living in Sweden, so they might as well just screw up now and just, leave. And I remember it for 2 reasons. I remember it because they came back and drew, and that was unbelievable. And then they went on to Dust, and Hellblinder was just pulling off these ridiculous shots all over the place with the AWP. It was almost like he had a magnet to those heads, and he was just popping them all over the place. And it was against one of the greatest teams that ever played Counter-Strike at the time, with a guy called Guardian playing. And it was just insane. Every match that they played was insane. They didn't win the tournament in the end. They came 3rd, I think. But just those 2 games live with me a long time, just because of what they were, but also because of what happened on air. It was the first time I really courted controversy, and I didn't mean to. I had Tosspot alongside me, and it must have been 2008 because it was when Usain Bolt had been in the news a lot, and I'd been looking all weekend. How do I get Usain Bolt into this? And we did some Call of Duty that weekend as well, Call of Duty 4.
I see where this is going.
And Call of Duty had this mode where players would walk, and then they would run, and they would sprint. And so we got down to a 4v1, and the guy had to go across. It was on Crash, and he had to go across the area where the helicopter is, in the main open area. And I said, and look at him go, he's sprinting like a black man. And I kind of realised I'd screwed up, and I went... and then kind of went, yeah, that's gone wrong. No, that's not right. And Stuart beside me was just, apoplectic. He was just like, what on earth did you say? And basically, yeah, what I meant to say was, he's sprinting like Usain Bolt, but it didn't come out in my mouth like that. It came out as he's sprinting like a black man. And then to try and correct it, I said with a gun. And of course, so yeah, that was pretty embarrassing. But a lot of people made fun of it. Luckily, they realised that it was just a faux pas, and I hadn't meant anything by it, and sort of let me off the hook a little bit. So yeah, that's basically why I remember both of those.
Would that be the worst thing that you've ever said, kind of on air, that you've caught yourself saying?
Yeah, one of them. I think as commentators, we
say stupid shit, man.
JP, you've done it. Yeah, I think it probably is the worst one. I've said a lot of crazy crap. Actually, there was one crazy crap thing I said. If he's watching or he watches this on Evolve, will remember this, and it actually makes me laugh thinking about it. Was also in Copenhagen. What is it about Denmark? Always fucked up in Denmark. And we were doing Euro Cup, and there was a Quake 4 TDM game going on, and Puri basically just started to do some really crazy shit in the server, and he grabbed the quad and he went absolutely nuts. And my phrase was, and Puri goes through them. What was it? It was smash, bang, wallop, and Puri goes through them. And I sat there and did about 20 seconds of voice, and Wheat came in and cut across me, and he said, dude, wait, what was that? Hang on, what's that I hear? Woo, woo, woo. Yep, that's the Shoutcast police. What did you just say? That's the worst pun I've ever heard, Redeye. And carried on with the cast, and he had me in hysterics, and he was also laughing as well. It was one of those cool moments that you have every now and again when you say stupid shit, and then the other guy picks you up but doesn't throw you under the bus for it.
Well, now kind of on the flip side here, what are some of the worst games that you've ever had to cast, and also why did you agree to cast them? 'Cause this is always my favorite question, because people always have a worse game that they've casted. Especially Wheat, he had some good ones.
How long did the show last, JP? No, wow. Oh Christ! So I did. I went to an event, and most of the events we did in the UK are with the iSeries lands with multiplayer. Do a great job. But one of the things that's always frustrated me about them is that sometimes they would spring a surprise on you when you'd got there. So you had no time to prep. You'd done all the prep you could do before you got there. And on a Saturday afternoon, they'd come to you and they'd say, "Hey, Red, you're pretty flexible. You can do, you can shoutcast on your wife washing up or something. So you should be okay with this. What we'd like you to do, we've got this 5v5 tournament that we've been running for Stalker, and we'd like you to cast the final." And I think, well, okay, how hard can it be? It's a first-person shooter. It's got guns in it. There's a map. Presumably, there's a time limit. How hard could it be? And yeah, I found out how hard it could be because this game had a day and night cycle. And when it went dark, you couldn't see anyone. And the map was so freaking enormous that the score, I think, was something like, I want to say 6-3 in 20 minutes. And that was Team Deathmatch. So that was pretty bad. But the worst one by far, and Ubisoft, if you're listening, you'll know where I'm coming from because they fixed this shit now. And I was so proud of them for fixing it as well. I actually sent them a note saying, thank you for fixing this. The original Vegas on Xbox didn't have a spectator mode. And they asked me to go along. And I didn't know this at the time because I didn't play the game and I hadn't had a chance. I was really busy. Poor excuses. And this was 2007? Yeah, 2007. And they basically come up with this crazy idea of running a rock show and a gaming tournament in a massive arena. It was like a theatre. In fact, I think it was not the Hammersmith. I think it was like, it's a really famous place anyway in London. And they asked me to commentate on this and then do some hosting of it was a battle of the bands, so it was unsigned bands. And then in between, I would do a commentary on a match, and it was quarter-final, semi-final, final. How hard can it be? 3 matches, brilliant. And it's Vegas, so I already played Rambo 6. I'm fairly familiar with the game. Only, I sit down to do the quarter-final, and the chap doing the broadcasting that's sending me the signal says, "I'm really sorry, but there's no spectator client." And I'm kind of like, okay, well, how am I going to watch this then? Well, we're going to feed you in a loop that we've kind of, I don't know what they'd done, but they'd figured some shit out with the Xboxes, fed something through an HDMI cable, fed it into a box. That box was feeding a monitor. The monitor was being piped up to me. So basically all I had for a 20-minute TDM match in Vegas was players running around on the screen. Now, just to explain to you, there are a few things that a game needs for a commentator to have a reasonable chance at commentating on it. One is a scoreboard. It didn't have a scoreboard. Another one is a timer. It didn't have a timer. Another one is player names. It didn't have any player names. And the final thing it needs, of course, is, who's won the game. And it didn't have that either. So basically, for 20 minutes, I had to watch them run around. And also, I didn't know which team they were on, by the way, because there were no colours. Not knowing who I was watching, who they were killing, which team they were on, how many minutes were left, or what the score was. I have no idea to this day how I pulled off 3 matches in that shit.
Do you know if there's VODs or anything like that from that event? Have you caught any? Do you have any in your backlog?
I hope fucking not.
Well, if you guys find them, post them in the YouTube comments. I'd love to be able to watch that.
Please don't Reddit.
In all the events that you've been a part of, what would you say has been the most influential in kind of the development of our industry? Would it be CGS?
I think in terms of development, in terms of broadcasting quality, yeah, it would definitely be CGS. Are you asking me what my favorite event is, or
just in general, like what event I guess had the most impact that you were a part of, that you're kind of proud to say I was a part of that event?
WCG Singapore 2005 World Cyber Games Grand Finals was amazing in every way. It was amazing to be there. I loved the city. I loved the country. I loved the people. The food was incredible, even though I got food poisoning on the last night. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Tosspot reckons I got drunk. The matches were amazing. I even remember, this is how amazing that tournament was. I actually remember Shagwar from Team 3D getting knifed by an Australian player in the first round, in the first match. And my words were something like, that's something he's going to tell his grandchildren in 40 years from now. That's how amazing that tournament. It was just like one of those things that it was brilliant for all of us. It was the first tournament I saw Tasteless at. Worked with Nice Guy Ed doing FIFA, Tosspot, Wheat, Bunny. We had a guy called Brian who wasn't called Brian, but he was his Chinese name, that came and helped us do some of the production. It was just an amazing event all round. 4,000 people sitting in the crowd. First time I'd ever done that. And we were up on the stage with the Koreans one side, the English guys the other side. First time I'd really been exposed to Korean culture and Korean people, and found them absolutely amazing. And it was just a phenomenal event all round. And then CGS probably in terms of broadcasting quality and the production. And you had Mike Burks on that show. Guys won, 12, 13 Emmy Awards for production in sports. And he really, if I had an influencer, he would be on that list for sure, because between him and Marcus, they pretty much gave me all the things I have now. They taught me more about storylines. They taught me about presentation, about ins, about outs, about closes, about listening to a mic, listen to a producer while you're talking at the same time. So many skills, really sick skills. And to work with a guy like that who genuinely loved me and Marcus on the show was extraordinary. It's one of the things I'll never forget in any shape or form, doesn't matter whether it's esports related or not. And he actually came to me and Marcus after we did a preview gig in a movie centre in the middle of LA in early 2007. 2007. And we pulled off a live show, and me and Marcus were just used to doing that. We've been doing it for years. And he came to us and he said, "We're going to do the CGS shows live. You two guys are the reason." And that was pretty mind-blowing. That was pretty special.
Well, we've been going for about an hour, guys, so we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to find out who's Redeye has as his favorite caster right now and kind of the current field of broadcasters. So we'll be right back, guys. You're not going anywhere. More Real Talk coming up right after this. All right, guys, welcome back to Real Talk. Now, Paul, you've really had your hand in getting kind of all of our current popular casters / personalities started in broadcasting. To name a few, we've got D-Man, kind of League of Legends fame, Joe Miller, ESL, Kalaris, StarCraft 2 ESL, Tasteless, GSL, you obviously know Tasteless, Too Good, of course works at the Too Good studio now, Apollo, of course working over there as well, but doing almost every StarCraft event, and of course Rivington from League of Legends. Out of all of those, who are you most proud to be able to say that I helped them out kind of in the beginning?
Wow. Yeah, that's quite an illustrious. I wouldn't say I helped them all out. I would say that I've tried to help them where I can. I think Polo, I think we gave him probably one of his first major international lands at WCG in 2010. Same with Rivington, actually. But I didn't find them as such. I sort of found Apollo, but he was already doing his stuff and he was starting to get really good. I remember having a conversation with Sean before WCG, and he said, you know, he was really professional. Actually, he came to me and he was like, "What do I need to do before I go out there to be really good?" And I said, "Prepare." It's simple as that. Prepare, prepare, prepare. It's 90% preparation.
That's where he gets that from.
Well, you know, if you do that right, then the rest gets a lot easier. And then when you get gaps and you get time to fill, if you've done your prep, that's when it comes in handy. And most events will prep ridiculously. I think he and I probably exchanged about 200 pages between each other for WCS Europe. And out of that, we probably use 10 pages. And that's the way it goes sometimes. If you get great games, you don't need your prep. You don't get great games, you need your prep. So it's there as a backup. And he was under a lot of pressure that weekend, I have to tell you. Him and Rivington were replacing Tasteless and Artosis for StarCraft at the World Cyber Games. And it didn't get much bigger than that back then. And so they were under an enormous amount of pressure to deliver something really well. And they were well taken by the community because they both did an amazing job that weekend. They really did. And to this day, Sean is the only non-player, I should say, to get a gold medal at a WCG. Ricky Kim actually gave me a gold medal to present to the MVP of all of our casters. We had 13 of them there that weekend, and we gave it to Sean. So I'm really proud of where he's come and how far he's come. Too Good, I gave him his first break in TV. I got him on the Sky TV channels with us, doing CGS. And worked with him a bit after that, and I was his agent for a little while, sorting him out gigs as well, and making sure he was earning the right money. Rivington, not so much. Rivington was actually introduced to me by Wheat. Wheat, I think, had worked with Rivington before and recommended him. And he was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I'm really thrilled to see he's doing really well. D-Man's an interesting story. D-Man and I actually didn't like each other very much back in the day, but I don't think it was anything more than the fact that he worked for TSN, I worked for ITG, and there was always an ITG-TSN rivalry. Although the English guys, me, D-Man and Joe in particular, didn't really get involved in that. But we went to a tournament in the UK and we were doing Supreme Commander. And Joe said to me, D-Man's really good at Supreme Commander. You should totally get him to do it. And I was like, I don't know. We don't really get on very well. And, he's in TSN. So I said, well, you know what? I'll swallow my pride. I'll step off my high horse and I'll put aside whatever feelings I have and let's talk. Let's talk to him. So we got him in. And he was super nice guy. Did a phenomenal job on Supreme Commander that weekend. And I just thought, you know what? We've got to have him in Quad V. We've got to have him in the team. And he's been involved ever since. And I think everyone knows just what a phenomenal caster he is already, and doing an amazing job with League of Legends. So, yeah, I'm particularly proud of the fact that he came on board. But I wouldn't take any credit from these guys. They've all worked super hard to get where they are. Hopefully, I've just given them a little bit of advice. And Kalaris is a great example of that. The guy's been around for less than a year in the big scene. I shared a room with him, I think, at his first big tournament, which was the Intel Extreme Masters at the beginning of the year. And what a crazy time to come in and just be thrown in at the deep end in a major tournament. And the guy, he could have sunk or swum, and he didn't just come out swimming. He came out setting world records. So he did amazingly well. But I wouldn't take any credit from him either. I mean, I've done nothing with him whatsoever other than maybe a few words of wisdom at that very first event. And that's all I got helped with at the start. I was very lucky to work with people like Wheat and Tosspot. And sort of grow up with them in the shoutcasting world as we were learning on the job because it was so new. And I don't know. Maybe I just feel like there's a certain responsibility for the old boys, as we're called, to make sure that we impart some of the knowledge that we've learned and pass it on, and make sure that commentators do the things that we should do. So I wouldn't take any credit for any of those guys doing really well. They've all worked tremendously hard to get where they are.
Now, out of kind of everyone in the world of broadcasting and esports, who would you say is... I guess if I say who is the best, that's maybe a little bit dickish to say, but who is your favorite, I guess, to watch?
You saying commentator or player?
Commentator, broadcaster.
That's still tough. Yeah. And do you know what? The weird thing for me, and this will sound really cheesy now, and it's not meant as a cop-out, I will answer the question. But I think we're really blessed right now with an amazing amount of talent at the top end. I think the middle is swollen right now. I think there's a lot of people trying it, and maybe they aren't hitting the standards that they should or could. And there's an awful lot of dross. That's me being absolutely honest with you. But at the top end, I think we're blessed with probably the greatest collection of commentators we've got across multitude of games than we've ever had before. And I'm talking TV level, professional level. But I couldn't really pick anyone out. I mean, you obviously pick out Tasteless, Artosis for their phenomenal duo, because they are a phenomenal duo. They've got that perfect blend of technical nuance, game understanding, comedy, fun, interesting, thoughtful, insightful, that any commentator duo, would aim for. But there's lots of great casters out there, and there's lots of different types of casters. You've got people like Wheat, who are still, for me, the greatest show host out there. Sorry, JP, no offense. He just pulls off the job every time. He's engaging, he's thoughtful, he's insightful, he's fun. And there isn't a better show host out there. But the guy can commentate. I mean, don't ever forget that DJ Wheat can fucking commentate like a boss. So yeah, I'd probably have those guys up there. But there's so many. Seriously, Mr. Bitter does a great job. D-Man does a great job. Joe's phenomenal to work with. I don't know. Pick any of them. But if you ask me who my favourite is, my favourite's a bit sad actually, because it's actually a guy called Loon, who's no longer with us. He died in 2006 in a motorcycle accident. And for me, he was kind of like, I wanted to be Loon, because he was a CTF commentator like me. He did Quake 3, I did UT. And we swapped roles now and again on different matches where we couldn't do one another's matches. And he's the only guy that's ever commentated on any of my actual matches. And I have a recording that he did of the Euro Cup final in 2005, which we won, that he commentated on, and it's still probably one of the most special things I'll ever have done for me, is the fact that he came and gave his time to do that. And he put me up on his floor at QuakeCon in 2005, and yeah, he was a great all-round guy. And I just, I wonder what he would make of all this stuff now, and how cool he would be right now. That would be awesome.
In DJ Wheat's Real Talk, actually, to bring him back up, he mentioned that you have a book, an ebook somewhere called "So You Want to Be a Caster." Is this available anywhere? Do you plan on putting this out? Will the public ever read this, or will it kind of stay behind the scenes?
No, I originally had it out on a website. It's just I've been really fucking lazy about that website, and I let it lapse, and I forgot to read it. And the book kind of died with the site. But I will put it back up again. I'm sorting out a website now, and I will put the original back up, and I'll even try and rewrite the new version, as it were, because it's hopelessly out of date. I think it was written back in 2006, maybe 7. Had an input from a lot of people, Wheat included. People like A-Spec, D-Man, Joe, Tosspot, they all helped put some stuff into it. And yeah, it was a startup guide. It was a way of, here's Winamp, here's plugin, here's how to set it up, here's what sound card I have, here's what headphones to go and buy. And then it was more than that. It was about professionalism. It was how to be professional. It was how to present on camera. It was how to talk into a microphone, use microphones, use pacing, use your voice, use dead air. I mean, a lot of casters these days, they just talk like this all the time, and they never ever let up, and they don't have any dead air, and they don't want to let any dead air, and they don't want to let the guy sitting next to them talk, because otherwise they won't get to talk anymore. And so they just keep talking and talking and talking until there's no more breath in their lungs, and they can't keep talking anymore, but they still keep talking, and you just don't know when they're going to stop, and they carry on talking so much that your head's going to explode, and the bloke sitting next to him just says, fuck this, I'm off, I can't take this guy any longer, because all he does is just keeps on talking and never takes a breath. I think I exaggerated the point, but dead air is so powerful if you use it right, and not enough commentators use that even today. So, yeah, went into that kind of stuff. Went into the other stuff that many people don't think about, that I'd learnt the hard way, or learnt from Wheat or Tosspot or whoever, or learnt at college, or learnt through listening to other mediums. The best advice I can ever give a commentator who wants to do it now is don't do video, right? Just go and do audio for a little bit, and listen to the radio. Go and tune into your local radio station and listen to an NFL guy, or a soccer guy, or a football guy, or a baseball guy. Listen to any of them, and listen to how they present. Listen to the pace that they have. Listen to when they get excited and how they get excited, and then try and work that back in an esports way. I'm a true believer in that you can learn massive amounts from people that do this for a living on radio. They've been doing it for 50 or 60 years sometimes, and you can learn monster amounts of stuff from them. So forget any book. I will put the book up eventually when I've stopped being lazy. But yeah, go and listen to the radio, and do it on radio for a little while. Don't do video. Do audio to start with, just until you understand what you need to describe and how you need to describe it. You'll be amazed by how quickly you run out of adjectives. We used to have a guy called Smeagol, Jeff, who was a great Counter-Strike commentator, but he only ever had 5 adjectives. And so what he did is he wrote down 10 adjectives that were similar to the 5 that he used, and he put them on a sticky piece of paper, and he pinned them to his monitor whenever we did an event. And he would pick them out. And every now and again, when his brain was stuck for an adjective, he'd look at his paper and he'd pick a new one out. And then when he'd run out of those 10, he'd write another 10 and he'd put those up. Simple, but really effective as well. And, it's little things like that make a really big difference.
Before we move on from DJ Wheat, I want to hear your best DJ Wheat story, as well as your best Too Good story. So,
oh my God, JP!
It's the best one. What's that?
That was my best DJ Wheat impression, which was hopeless. Yeah. My best DJ Wheat story. Wow. Actually, there is one. He got drunk one night on a stream, and he sang the Elf song. That was fun. That might be out there somewhere, actually.
Was this on Epileptic Gaming, or where was this at?
No, this was on a cast.
Oh.
Yeah, I also remember he did something very similar to me. I did shots for flag caps. There was a boring match going on, and I just typed into the chat, for each flag you guys cap, I'm going to take a shot of tequila, and it ended 6-5 in the end. That was bad. We did something really similar before I did that. Actually, he did it years and years before. What did he do? I think it was on. It was a Quake match, and I think it was every time they went down. Wow, which map was that? I can't remember. But he basically also took a shot every time they fell down a particular place on a map. That was pretty funny too. I don't know. I mean, he works his ass off, the guy. Every time we go everywhere, that I always think back. Was there some fun stuff with Wheat? And there wasn't, because he just worked all the time. Do you know, he even gave up his ticket to a U2 concert with Carmack and let me go instead when we were in Paris in 2005. And U2 were playing live at the Stade de France, and we had VIP tickets. So Carmack and I went instead of Wheat because we just had too much to do. So I don't really have any crazy stories about Wheat, but certainly some crazy stories around him. I mean, you know, the other thing we did in Denmark, we had a guy called Rance Costa. Do you remember Rance?
Yes. Yeah, I worked with him a couple times, yeah.
I love Rance. He's a great guy.
He's a good guy. Him and Hogan, man, those guys are troopers.
Hogan as well. So we were out in Denmark, and I think it was Rance's first time out of the US, and I told him that the women in Denmark were pretty hot. And we went to a pub on the evening before the Saturday, on the Friday night, and he got really friendly with a couple of really, really talented ladies. You know what I'm talking about? Talented ladies?
Yeah. Sure.
And Wheat and I and a few of the other guys, we were like, you know, we're going to go back. We've got to get up early. And Rance was like, yeah, no worries. You know, I'm just going to have a couple more drinks with these ladies, and then I'll be back. And then we got up in the morning, and we met in the lobby, and we headed towards the studio. No Rance. And we were like, yeah, it's fine. He'll be there. And he wasn't. And we started to set up, and by then Wheat was starting to get a little bit worried, and he started working on the production stuff. Luckily, he knew how to put all the production stuff together, because otherwise we'd been fucked. And 11 o'clock came and went, 12 o'clock came and went, and the first casts came up, and we were like, shit, what are we going to do? So we just went out, and Wheat and I just did what we needed to do on the cast, and somehow, I don't know how we did it, but we managed to pull it off. And then 1 o'clock came, still no Rance, and then at about 20 past 1, I'm outside having a cigarette, and Rance pulls up, dishevelled, has virtually no clothes on, looks like he's, you know, been torn to pieces and shredded, and gets out of this cab, staggers in, and we're like, dude, what the hell? What happened? And he's like, I have no idea. These two women, they like invited me back, and then, you know, I ended up in this place with them, and then it's in the middle of nowhere, and I had no wallet, and I had no idea which hotel we were staying in, and then I woke up at like midday, and now I'm here. Unbelievable. So that was fun.
Those guys are fun to work with, Rance and Hogan. Hogan's actually a name.
Hogan's great. I miss Hogan.
I think it was the Day 9 launch party. I worked with Hogan and Rance. They did the production for that. And Hogan's actually like a Navy SEAL when it comes to production. He'll just like drop in out of nowhere and like fix a little light, then go back up, and you don't see him for a while. And he's out there like taking photos, posting them on Facebook, like doing our social media as well as the actual production for everything. That guy's actually insane. But now I got to hear the best Too Good story.
The best Too Good story?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Now we're talking. Holy crap. He stole Fatality's tiger once. Have you had that story?
Yeah, Carmack actually told that.
Told you that one? Yeah, that was pretty funny. I think Fatality actually ordered one of the bouncers to beat him up.
Yeah. Carmack was talking about that.
That was pretty fucking crazy. But that's pretty much what Too Good was like. Wow. He's had so many. I can't tell you them. Seriously. I know this is real talk, but crap. Have you had him on yet? Have you had Too Good?
Yes. Yeah, he was actually the 3rd or 4th episode. It was the longest episode yet.
Is it? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 3.5 hours or something like that.
Jeez, I don't know. He's just crazy every time. What amazes me is I mean, he's with a really stunning woman right now, and he always seems to be with someone. How he does it, I really don't. He's incredible. I mean, he's an enigma.
All right.
He really is.
All right. Let's see here. Now, you've kind of been an FPS caster, first and foremost, throughout your career. And right now, the closest thing we kind of have to CS 1.6 and Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament, all that stuff, Shoot Mania and CSGO. First off, what are your thoughts on these two games?
I'm kind of indifferent to them both at the moment. I've been playing Go for about 8 or 9 months, maybe 10 months now, from the beta onwards. pretty early on, and I've seen it sort of grow. And it got to a point actually earlier on in the year where I thought, actually, this could be all right. This could be quite good. And then it came out, and it kind of got turned into some sort of Left 4 Dead thing. It was really bizarre. It's getting worked on a lot, so I don't want to knock the guys too much. It's a reasonable game. I mean, there's no doubt about it. If it came out, we'd never had CS 1.6 and Counter-Strike Source. I think we'd all be going, actually, this is pretty good. But because we kind of know, that the recoil isn't quite right, and the patterns aren't quite right, and the guns are a little bit weird and not maybe balanced as well as they could be, and then they've got this ridiculous fucking grenade, which fucking is a Molotov, which, don't get me started on that fucking piece of crap. Yeah, it does my head in a little bit. And this matchmaking system I tried this evening, holy shit. I mean, if they put that in League of Legends would have like 5 players worldwide, because it's so terrible. They really have to fix it. And do you know the worst thing? If you get so frustrated that you've had like your 8th game of the evening and you've had it bombed, and then the next one you go into, you suddenly realise, oh fuck, you know what? I've been trying to play a game for 45 minutes now, and now I've got some sort of interview thing with JP. I'm going to have to leave. So you come out and you leave and you get banned. And you're like, well, come on. Like, what is that? So they need to fix that stuff really quickly. At the moment, I'm playing on community servers, and they're kind of okay. Except most of them are French, and most of them are in casual mode, which means you have 3-minute rounds with guys running around like headless chickens who have too much armor and too many powerful weapons with too much money, which is really annoying as well. So from a competitive point of view, I think it's okay at the moment. There's a number of teams like NiP and Very Games that are really good, and they're playing at a very high level, but there's not many others around after that that can really step up. So I'm a bit worried about it at the moment, but we'll see. Shootmania, do you know what? The guys from Shootmania, I met them out in Valencia, and they're massively passionate about esports and about FPS, and it's amazing to watch, but I'm not sure about the game. I think it's got potential, and I'd love it if it was Capture the Flag. Do you know, that's the thing. So I'm going to be really upfront about it. If they had a 5v5 Capture the Flag game right now, and they put it out against League of Legends and StarCraft, it would hold its own as an esport, because it's got team play, it's got clever thinking, it's got strategy, it's got amazing shots, it's interesting to watch because it's tense. I mean, nothing for me gets me going more than a guy running all the way through a map with a flag, being supported by his teammates, being gunned down, respawning, coming back out to help him, getting all the way back to the flag, and then dropping it a millimetre away from the flag, and then it getting returned. There is nothing more exciting for me in video gaming than that. And, I might be a bit biased because that's what I played, but I just wish it was around now in some form, in a really good game that we could watch. And high-paced, fast action FPS would be amazing.
Do you think it has anything to do with the movement in Shootmania? That's also a big reason why it kind of hasn't taken off, since everyone's so used to kind of the movement in Quake and how fluid that was?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think that probably adds to it. I mean, it's another movement system to get used to, and then once you get used to it, actually, it's pretty quick. Yeah. But it does take a little bit. It's more sort of hybrid Tribes, stroke Quake, stroke Unreal Tournament. Yeah. It almost used to be everything to everyone, and fails to be anything to anyone, which is a shame. And I know there's a few good players playing it right now, Zakibus and Garpy, for instance, and a few of the other guys that I used to play with back in the day. So, I hope it's okay. I hope it works out. I hope it gets big tournaments. I think it's only got one big tournament right now, and the same with CS:GO. But we'll see. I'm not even sure that people are interested and can invest the amount of time it takes to be really good at an FPS anymore. Maybe that's why. Don't know.
How do you feel about the fact that the MOBA genre and RTS are kind of taking over well, not taking over. I guess RTS has been around for a long time at the top, but that they are kind of the only two things right now that are driving esports, with really no FPS kind of around to take up the flag. Is there an issue? Do you have an issue with that? Do you think there should be an FPS along with these other two genres?
No, I don't have any issue with that. I think it's great that the games come along and they produce great audiences and help us push esports out into the mainstream a little bit. I'm not convinced that we need the mainstream anymore. I'm not convinced that we need mainstream TV, for instance. But certainly seeing us on the front page of USA Today I felt that was amazing, and that was esports. It wasn't necessarily League of Legends or Dota 2 or StarCraft 2 or whatever. That was esports, and we should collectively be really proud of the fact that we can push that far and penetrate that kind of publication. That's great. If we do it with StarCraft 2, I'll be mildly more happier. If we do it with League of Legends, I'll be fine with that. And if we do it with Dota 2, I'll be happy with that. If we did it with a Quake or an Unreal Tournament-based capture the flag, I'd be ecstatic with that. So no, I think it's fine. I think esport is different to different people, and as long as we respect the fact that there are different esports and different genres and different games, that's all healthy. If we start hitting on the fact that, well, this game's got more attention than us, and that's not fair, and we'll throw our toys out of the pram, then you might as well be 12 and forget about esports ever growing.
I am going to pull a question from Reddit here. Jake was saying that there are a lot of StarCraft 2 players out there who have never seen a competitive FPS match before. If you could recommend one series to watch, regardless of what game it is, CS, Quake, Unreal, etc., what series or match would that be? What should they go check out to kind of get that same excitement that you were talking about?
If you can find the Quake 4 TDM from Covman. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe I can put this in the chat. Covlan would have been about 2006, I think. TDM video. Let's have a look. Looking a bit rough.
I'm sure someone in the chat can find it and link it for us.
Yeah, I mean that's the one I would pick up. That's the TDM game. 1v1. Wow. There was a really cool game at ESWC 2005 between Lauke and Falcon. It was a semi-final, and it was on... Think about it. I'm not sure which map it was on, actually, but it was a really, really good match. The reason I'd asked you to watch that is because it was 0-0 for almost 14 minutes. And you might think, hold on, is Redeye really just throwing out 14-minute 0-0 game as a way of like showing how cool FPSs are? Yeah, I am, because that game was unbelievable for how close it was all the way through, and how they both got down to almost no health and somehow recovered every time, and it finished with an incredible kill. I won't spoil it for you, but an incredible kill at the end, which was a mistake, and it was the only mistake that either player made in the entire match, let alone the map. So that was pretty amazing. Before that, there were some stunning games. I remember Socrates beat Fatality in a WCG qualifier, North America. Might have been 03 or 04, and he did it. He was about 4 or 5 frags down, and he did it with about 14 or 15 seconds remaining. That was fucking incredible. And the worst thing about it for Fatality was it knocked him out of the qualifier, and he didn't qualify for WCG that year. And Socrates went instead. There was another game between Chaotix and Fatality, which was also an amazing game. The trouble is with these games, I don't know if those videos exist, because we didn't have video back then. That's the problem I've got, is that I can tell you these great games. In fact, do you know what? Do me a favor. If you haven't already done so, go and visit esreality.com. And there was a thread on there not that long ago, actually. Let me just have a look. There was a thread. Yeah, here we are. I'll put this thread in the chat. There's a thread in there which has got some amazing people in that thread that have been around for longer than I have in Quake, and it's the most epic moments in Quake history. And there's a ton of stuff in there. There's some mixture of dodgy videos, and there's some demos and some SWF files. It's a real mixed bag of stuff, but there's some amazing stuff in there. Any of those, I'm pretty sure, will be fine for being recommended. Let me find the channel. Where am I? Uh-oh. Anyone know how to operate a computer? Help, please. There you go. I've put it in there.
Cool.
So, any of those.
I'll put that in the YouTube info for people watching the VOD. So let's move on, and let's talk about CGS, which for whatever reason it's become my favorite thing to pull people on here and talk about. You worked with CGS for quite some time. What were your roles in the company to start off with?
So I wasn't involved at the very beginning. ITG were, and GGL were. They were sort of hired to provide commentary and support in 2006, and they did some things called the Championship Gaming Invitationals, which I wasn't involved in, but I looked at them and I thought, that could be quite interesting. And then my involvement began in March 2007. I had a phone call from a chap called Neil Porter, who was one of the producers on the show. I had never heard of him before. He got my name and my number from someone in esports. And this is a true story as well. He phoned me up and he said, I've heard you're pretty good. I've seen a video of you and Marcus commentating together, and we'd like you to do a screen test. And I was like, a what? He said, a screen test, you know? Like, you come out and you do a small event with us, and we see, whether you're good for the show. And I'm like, what show? I had no idea. I had no idea what their plans were. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know the league. I didn't know the players. Didn't know what they were planning. Knew nothing. This was a Tuesday. And I said, well, sure, yeah. When do you want me to do it? And he said, how about Thursday? And I said, Thursday's in like 2 days from now. And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, where? And he said, LA. I'm like, well, okay, but I'm in the UK right now. You know that, right? And he's like, yeah, no problem. We can fly you out. Okay, well, then yeah, I guess. We agreed a small fee. He flew me out on a Thursday. They sent a limousine to pick me up from the airport, and I was kind of freaked out, and put me up in a ridiculously expensive hotel, which again I was freaked out by, and came and sent a car to pick me up and chauffeured me to the place in Culver City. It was in the IMAX cinema, and I met up with Wheat, and they gave us a brief script. We sat down with Mike Burke, so I was introduced to him. I had no idea who he was. We went through the show rundown, and Marcus and I presented in the movie center, and we presented basically what you see. It's what we did. And yeah, that's when Mike Burks then said, we've decided to do the show live, and we'd like you two guys to be our commentators. And we were like, okay, great. And it kind of exploded from there. So I was hired originally as a commentator on the show, originally to support Wheat. Wheat would take 2 of the games, I would take the other 2, and we would be the main commentators on the show. And then we were paired with Fatality as the color commentator. And man, do I have some funny shit about him. Jesus Christ, I love the guy, so don't misunderstand this, but it's just funny how he, it was his first shoutcasting, commentating gig, so he was pretty raw at it. And there were just some times where I don't know if he was looking at something else or watching something else, or I don't know, listening to something else maybe, but it didn't seem like he was paying attention. We had a FIFA game where I said, so John, it's 0-0 at half-time. What do you expect from the second half? And he turned to me, and this is absolute God's honest truth, and he said, well, Red, I think one of them should score. And I went, okay, well, back into the second half then. And I was just sat there thinking, maybe he didn't hear me or something. No, we had a lot of fun working on the show. And yeah, that was my job. And then Marcus, unfortunately, was working with the GGL at the time. I say unfortunately because some sort of politics went on for the World Finals later on in 2006, and he wasn't able to come back on the show, which meant that they promoted me to lead caster, which was a massive job for me. Probably a little bit too early, if I'm honest. I remember that very first one I did was very ropey, and I was pretty disgusted with myself, and I went back to my apartment, and I fucking worked my ass off that night to absolutely know the ins and outs of every fucking nook and cranny in the script for the following day. And I came in early. I came in at 10 a.m. in the morning, and I worked through it again. I did the rehearsals in the afternoon as if I was doing the live show, and I put absolutely maximum effort into it to make sure I knew what I was doing, and I was much more comfortable that evening, and I pulled it off that evening. And Mike Burks came up to me and he said, I'm so glad you pulled that off tonight, because we couldn't have had 2 nights in a row like that one. And so that was good, but it was a lot of pressure. And then luckily I managed to talk to Wheat and talk to CGS and persuade them that they should offer him a role, which they did. And then eventually he accepted that role. And I know that it took him a lot of time to kind of think about that. And then he came into CGS full time, which meant he returned for the second season. We went back to the way we were doing it the first season, which was great. I was much more comfortable with it. And then of course it folded. So just before it folded, Andy Reif had spoken to me about some of the ideas that I'd put forward. I was very much involved by the second season in deciding the points system and changing the points system with Mike Burks, and pushing some ideas that I had to try and bring more people involved that were already involved in esports, because it was very closed off to the clans. And I had some ideas that Andy Reif really liked for the third season. and his idea was that he would appoint me as the European Commissioner, or the face of European CGS anyway. And the plans that I drew up included contacting all of the major teams like SK and Fnatic and Mouse Sports and what have you, and getting them to adopt a city and then enter a team into the CGS qualifiers in Europe, so that they were included for the first time. And then unfortunately CGS closed.
Yeah.
So we never got to see how that panned out.
Let's talk about the Playboy Mansion.
Yes, let's. That was awesome.
What the fuck was CGS doing there? And how was that event for you?
Dude, that was as you guys say, that was off the hook. It was the craziest weekend. But I'd had a week out in LA before because I was doing the what they called the Combine, North American Combine, where the best 60 players from all the qualifiers all over North America came together at Fox Studios. We actually recorded it in the same studio as Dama and Greg had been recorded in, and Planet of the Apes, the original. So that was a real thrill to see that sign on the outside of our studio and then go in and do it. And I'd done that during the week, and then on the Saturday morning, I got up and got dressed and went down to the pickup point with all the players, and we were bussed up to the Playboy Mansion, and we had our names checked off on the door. We all got our little, mementos to go in, and wandering around the Playboy Mansion was pretty surreal. Wandering around, the peacocks were everywhere, and the monkeys were going mad, and the grotto was very appealing, and the bar outside was amazing, and it was crazy. And I was with Sarah, my ex at the time.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say she was there with you. I was like, Redeye.
No,
Redeye.
she knew I was going to do it. I told her beforehand, and she said to me, she was pretty good about it, but she said, "There's only one rule, okay? I just don't want to see pictures. So just whatever you can do to not have any pictures would be great." And I said, "Okay, that's fair enough. Do whatever I want, but there's no pictures. Fine, within reason, of course." And so I did my best to avoid having my picture taken at the Playboy Mansion all day. And then at about 12 o'clock, just before we did rehearsals, I got called by the PR team at CGS and got told I had to go and have my photograph taken with the girls. And there is this picture out there right now of me with these. Yeah, and I look like the most awkward human being, surrounded by the most beautiful women in the world, and thinking, shit, I hope my missus doesn't see this.
I'm going to see if I can find that very picture. While I'm doing this... Actually, no, I found it. Here we go. That was easy enough.
Joy. So I luckily I didn't get into massive amounts of trouble with my girlfriend at the time, but it was not good. But that was quite awkward. But yeah, the experience was amazing, and doing a live show from the Playboy Mansion was...
What was that like? It just seems... In all of the esports events, that seems like the weirdest fucking place to have an esport event.
When you think about it, we were doing the first season draft. So actually, when you look at drafts that have happened in other sports, they've gone to big places, maybe not the Playboy Mansion, but they've gone to iconic places to go and make those drafts. So I don't know, maybe it wasn't that far removed from I think what they really wanted to do is make a splash, and that's what it did. It really kind of opened it up, and we had all sorts of press there. The press were absolutely freaking amazing, the type of press that we had there for that weekend. And so I think that's probably what it was. It was for the publicity more than anything else. It was trying to, hello, here we are, we're making a name for ourselves and we're not frightened of saying who we are. But actually doing the event was incredible. We had the players behind us, we had a front desk facing back towards the stage, we had Striker who came on in a robe.
Oh, Striker, I remember him.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Guy. He's a DJ with K-Rock that I went out with a lot when I was in LA and hung out with. Fantastic guy. He was the presenter. Do you know what? This is gospel now as well. This will scare you, and it scared the shit out of me at the time. Mike Burks comes over to me about an hour before we go live. We've done rehearsals by now. We're all ready dressed and we're ready to go live. About an hour before, we're just chilling out, and he comes over and he says, Red, how do you feel about presenting this show? And I'm like, as in like doing Striker's role? And he said, yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess, but I prefer Striker to do it if I'm honest. I've kind of prepared for being the pundit on the on the panel. Okay, but you'll do it. yeah, what's the problem? Well, Striker's sick and he's laying down right now, and we're not sure he's going to be ready. Okay. Like, I guess, I mean, we're only at the Playboy Mansion going out live to hundreds of thousands of people on a first ever draft of a league you want to be really successful. Yeah, I'll do it, I guess. I was absolutely bricking. I thought I was going to faint just with the sheer nausea of thinking I had to go and do this role. And luckily for me, and everyone else for that matter, Striker recovered and he did the event. And he's a really ballsy guy to do that. So we had him. We also had Andrew Siciliano, who's a bit of an NFL legend actually. Still working with ESPN, I think, or Fox out in LA. And he was on the panel with us, and we had myself and Fatality. And it was pretty surreal, but I was really pleased that I managed to get 5 of the first 6 picks correctly, chosen. That was quite nice. So I was supposed to be the expert on the panel after all. But then we'd been there for about 90 minutes, about halfway through the draft. And a pick got made. And Andrew Siciliano turned to Fatality and he said, "So what do you think of that pick then, John?" And John was kind of staring out into space like that. And he didn't say a word. And then he's like, "Well, Fatality? Thoughts?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I got really distracted. There are 5 bunny girls just by the pool out there." And
God damn it.
So Siciliano turns around, true professional, and he says, "John, it's fine, you're at the Playboy Mansion, you're allowed to look, that's fine. What do you think about the draft pick?" And he was like, "Yeah, the pick. Yeah, I'm still distracted right now, maybe Redeye." Absolutely fantastic. Halfway through the whole show. But it was brilliant because I could hear all the production crew in the truck in my ear laughing their heads off as well. So it was brilliant. And then the after party was amazing. People throwing each other in the grotto and brilliant. Really amazing. Mildly tacky, but really, really good experience. It's one of those things that you put on your CV and you tell people that you've done a live show from the Playboy Mansion. There's not many people that have done that. So yeah, it's quite nice.
Now, I don't know if you remember this. I missed that draft. The next draft that was at South by Southwest was actually the first time I met you. And
yeah,
I was quite upset that I was at that one. I wasn't at the Playboy Mansion because I had an offer to go to that one, except I turned it down because I was in school and I think I had midterms or something like that. So first off, Jason Bass, you suck. I should have gone to the Playboy Mansion. Second off, that second draft was terrible. I think didn't CGS die after that second draft, or was it around for a while?
No, it still had that year. That was 2007.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
It was in March at the Penny Arcade at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of an alternative rock fan, by the way. I like bands like Red and 10 Years and Breaking Benjamin and bands you've probably never heard of like Chevelle.
No, I know. Chevelle's good.
Those kind of bands were playing at South by Southwest that weekend as well, so it was freaking amazing for me. I probably enjoyed that more than I did the play.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the death of CGS and how impactful, in your eyes, in your view, was this on the industry? Did it really set us back as much as everyone kind of thought at the time that it was going to?
No, I don't think so. I think it had an impact on certain communities. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think it killed CS 1.6 in North America for sure, but it didn't kill it worldwide. It put a bit of a spanner in the works of some of the other things that were going on in North America at the time as well. I think luckily for us, MLG came along and moved away from consoles and much more towards PCs. So, that was a saving grace, and that might not have happened. Let's face it, if CGS had carried on. But I don't think it killed us. I think it put us back a little bit, and I think it affected a number of people that were involved. Certainly affected me, and I know it affected Wheat as well. Mm-hmm. This isn't a sob story, but it pretty much killed my career at the time. And a lot of people probably don't even know that when it died at the in November of 2007. 2007? No, 2008. And at the time, I was really reliant on TV contracts to keep me going. And the CGS was obviously the biggest of that. But what people won't realise is that I also had a contract with Sky in the UK to cover all the CGS stuff as well. So I not only lost direct TV stuff in the US, I lost the Sky stuff in the UK. And I also lost the Eurosport stuff across Europe as well, which was another TV contract that I had. And then a couple of weeks later, I lost another contract as well, completely unrelated, but it was esports related. And 4 of my 5 TV contracts suddenly had gone down the pan within the space of 2 weeks. And the 5th of those was X League, which died a couple of months later. So I went from having 5 TV contracts 10 to 15 events elsewhere with WCG and what have you elsewhere, multiplayer and what have you, all over the world, to nothing. Within, all I had left literally was WCG Grand Finals. That was the only tournament I had left as a contract for 2009. So, yeah, it massively affected me, and I know it affected Wheat as well. And it's part of the reason why he had to move back home. So, it was hard for a lot of people at CGS. There were a lot of people, a lot of very nice people, a lot of very good people, but also a lot of bad people too.
What should they have done that they didn't? Or what could they have done better or right in your eyes?
Less money. Spend it better. They just spent too much money. A lot of people say, "Oh, it was the games." Well, yeah, okay, I take your point. Could have had better games from an esports perspective. Some people blame the series. Some people blame the score system. I actually liked the score system. I thought it was quite revolutionary. And just while we're on the subject of that, if you think about this for a second, Counter-Strike 1.6 is pretty much, it's almost dead now. We've got one more tournament to go, and then that's probably it, apart from the minor ones. And that's had a 12, 13-year life cycle. And that's pretty long for any esport. StarCraft Brood War was the same, 10 to 12 years. That's fantastic. But that's it. In 10 years from now, do you think people will be looking back and talking about, what happened in CS 1.6? No, they won't be doing that. There will be a few, but there won't be the main people. And there won't be any record books because no one kept records properly. We didn't record who won what tournaments and when they won it. These days we're much better at it. We've got things like Liquipedia, and I know there's one for League of Legends as well. So we're getting better at it. But again, those records, once that game dies and they move on to another one, nobody will remember them, and the websites will die and we'll lose the records forever. So in terms of longevity as a sport, we really suck at it right now. Really suck at it. And sport has that. Sport has history. And when it has history, it has credence, it has appeal. And people like me, for Formula One, for instance, can go back into the history books and look at the old school Formula One people and see who was like who, and who did well, and who was phenomenal, and who had the greatest drives, and all the records that go with it. And those records are there to be beaten. So you have a history, and you have prestige, and you have credence. And we don't have that in esports for any length of time other than a decade, maybe. And so what CGS did in a way was potentially give us something that had longevity, i.e. the score system, because the games weren't actually that important. The players weren't, they were going to come and go each season, and they could have careers within CGS. That was great, but the score system could last forever. So in 100 years from now, we could look back at results between Carolina Core and San Francisco Optics, and we could do head-to-head comparisons about how many times they played each other, what the scores were, how many points they got from each game. And we could legitimately, not always, because it's always hard in history, you can't compare, Jim Clark in the 60s to James Hunt in the 70s to Nigel Mansell in the 80s to Lewis Hamilton today. You can't do that. They all drove different cars with different brake horsepowers, with different settings and different tracks and what have you. But you can still have the argument, and that's the important thing. It's the story there. And we can't really do that without some sort of longevity. So in a way, I think I like the CGS score system because it gave us an opportunity to have that. How we cope with that going forward, I have no idea now. So you can blame them for a lot of things, but the main thing for me, I think, was just the waste of money, the amount of money they spent. I think they spent 40 grand on a trophy. That's insane.
Now, this last question, before I even say it, I'll just preface it with this. This is going to sound extremely biased towards EG, towards hating EG. EG was like one of the only teams that didn't basically sell themselves to the CGS, and when a lot of these other teams did that, they lost the majority of their sponsors, and EG was kind of there on the outside and picked up a lot of stuff. Would you say, is it a safe statement to say that with CGS picking up all these other teams, it allowed EG to become what they are today? Is that too out there?
I think that probably demotes the amount of work that the guys at EG have put in over the last 4 or 5 years. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I would say that Alex Garfield is a very smart cookie. He and I spent a lot of time together actually in LA during the second season, because he was actually on the complexity team, advising and helping, and almost like an assistant manager to Jason Lake. Whilst he also simultaneously built up EG. And there is no doubt in my mind that he benefited from 3D and complexity going inside the CGS and those sponsors then having, nothing to put money into. And he was very smart. Some would say calculated. I would say clever. At going to see these sponsors and getting them on board for EG. And then when CGS finished, he was also very quick at snapping up the players that he wanted, that thought he could get the best marketing out of. And he was very quick to do that. And I know that caused Jason Lake a lot of problems and Complexity a lot of problems when they try to come back. Can you then say that that's the only reason they're successful over the last 4 years? No, I don't think so. I think there's, a lot more goes into a team these days, particularly on that level, that you couldn't call something that happened 5 years ago the only reason that they're here. So
right.
I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that it's solely down to that, but undoubtedly it definitely helped them get kick-started. I don't think Alex would disagree with that.
All right, well, that's all I've got on CGS. Let's talk about WCG now. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I do want to mention that you've done 6 WCG finals before, and they've probably had, what, a total of...
I think it's 12.
12?
No, maybe... No.
Less than that, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe 10. Last year's was the 10th anniversary, because the first one didn't actually technically count.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was 10 last year.
Question is, why has the WCG turned to such a terrible league? It's almost a joke these days, at least in the StarCraft community, to mention WCG as a big event.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible shame. I really do. When I went there in 2005 with Wheat and Co. I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that it was going to be big, but I was absolutely blown away by just how amazing it was. And then we went to Monza the following year, and we had the most miserable time ever. It was the worst tournament event I've ever been to.
Is that in Monza? Is that what you're talking about?
Monza,
yeah.
Italy. Everything was wrong with it. Just everything went wrong that weekend. I don't know what was going on, but it was just horrible. And yeah, it was just sucked. And so it blew me away one year and then completely ruined it the following year. But then every year since, it's kind of picked back up, and it's still WCG. It's still special. And it's funny, actually, thinking back, I fell out with Tasteless and Artosis. We didn't have a ruck as such, but they were getting paid a lot more money doing their StarCraft stuff in Korea, and they were really building a career for themselves. And I wanted to hire them for WCG again. We'd hired them 1 year already. But anyone that's ever done a WCG will know that WCG tournaments don't pay very well. It's just the budgets aren't massive as people might expect. They're quite small, actually. Generally, they cover flights and hotels and a very small token fee. But it's never been hard to get people to go and do WCG Grand Finals because they've always been very prestigious. They've always been seen as if you've done a WCG Grand Final, you've arrived. And if you've done 3 of them, you're pretty fucking special. So it wasn't hard to get people along. And I had a bit of an argument with Tasteless and Artosis. It ended up that they didn't go, and I was pretty pissed about it. We've moved on since then. In fact, we've spoken about it this year, just as a sort of, a level of expectation, really, between the 3 of us was just wrong time. But no hard feelings, thankfully. But yeah, it was always the most prestigious, and I almost felt like I would go and do it for free because it was that kind of tournament. But this year, I think Jenna used the word clusterfuck, and that seems to spring to mind right now. I don't know. It's really quite depressing seeing where it's going right now. And it'll be the first one I'm not at this year. I'm definitely not going. We had a contract with them that expired in October and wasn't renewed. I haven't had any contact from them. I guess that's it. I think that's the end of WCG as far as I'm concerned. And I sort of share the frustrations of the StarCraft community as well. It's a real shame because that, for me, was the one tournament that carried on through the thick and the thin, wasn't affected by the other, problems with prize paying money out, with dying, with CGS coming along. It rode everything. If you look at its history, it outlived WSVG, CPL, CGS. It carried on going, and it carried on doing it exactly the same way as it did the previous year. And I like the pomp, and I like the ceremony. I love the fact that it's a country thing. I love the fact that they stand for fair play. And it's all kind of gone, unfortunately.
Is it a case of kind of Samsung losing money in it? Is it they just don't want to support it anymore? Do you have any inkling as to what
No,
the fuck
Jay,
went wrong?
I do from last year. I understood that last year was it came together pretty late, and so Korea was a bit rushed, and it was a much more low key WCG Grand Finals last year, but still really good. I still enjoyed it. Um, but yeah, I have no idea. I really don't. I'm not being coy. I have no idea um, why it's gone where it's gone. Um, yeah, I might just play Beyond the Game one more time tonight. Just
Is that your favorite song ever? It's mine.
Do you know, we actually used to run a sweepstake at every World Cyber Games Grand Finals, and the sweepstake was that at the rehearsals you had to choose how many times we would hear Beyond the Game all weekend. And I think I won the sweepstake in 2009 with 106.
Jesus. And was that replays or was that just like hearing
Every
it
time
once counted?
If you could hear it through the tannoy or hear it over the stage or wherever you could hear it, that counted as one play if everyone could hear it.
Oh god.
106 times in 4 days. My ears were bleeding.
We're getting closer to the end of the show now. I do want to bring up Quad V though. And can you kind of explain to people what Quad V is/was? My experience with it is that is it still a thing today? Is it still out there?
Yeah. So the bottom line is that in 2007, actually the end of 2006, I wanted to be full time with GGL, and it just wasn't going to work out that way. And I told Wheat at ITG that I was going to retire. I don't know if you can ever retire from esports, really. Just come back as a respawn character. But I'd pretty much decided that's what I was going to do. And then I was persuaded by a friend of mine called Oliver Aldridge, who is an utter technical genius. The guy really is. He does work for the government on networks and stuff. He really is a freaking awesome dude. And he persuaded me that actually we could probably do this. We could probably rival ITG and TSN and do our own thing, but just do it in Europe and do it in the UK. And I thought, yeah, maybe he's onto something. If I can persuade a couple of really good commentators to come and join us, then maybe. And I managed to persuade Joe Miller to come in. Managed to get A-Spec in, who was very raw at the time, very new, but promising. And then eventually got Tosspot and then got D-Man as well. So within 3 months of starting up Quad V in 2007, we had pretty much the best fucking commentators in the world in terms of English guys, all in one place. And ITG were kind of on the down at that point. Wheat was doing much more of his own stuff. TSN had pretty much died. A couple of the guys like Corey Dunn and Van Silly, who I'm still sad that I've never been able to sit and commentate with those guys yet. Who knows, one day maybe. They'd sort of died, and then really it was only really Gottfrag TV with Scoots and co, and they were kind of doing a different set of tournaments to us. So we didn't really have a rival, so we're very lucky in a way that we came along like that. And then we just grew, very similar to the way that ITG had grown. We started doing WCG, we started doing local lands, European lands, then we started doing the big stuff. Then we did CGS, live streaming for CGS, through my involvement with them, but also Quad V's involvement with them. And then we sort of drifted a little bit, and we've done a few other lands over the years. We've done Gadget Show every year for the last 4 years. Number of other tournaments as well. Most of them you won't even see, but for instance, this year's WCS UK finals, that was all Quad V. All the production in that was Quad V. So, they're still going. I've actually stood down now and left, obviously, because I'm joining ESL, and that would be a conflict of interest. So, it was my company. I designed the logo. I came up with the name. I bought the website. I put the first piece of code on the site. And Ollie did all the other technical genius stuff like networks and building our own version of XSplit effectively, but 5 years ago before anyone had done that. Coming up with all the audio equipment. Ian at Quad V's been amazing over the years, helping me set up stuff in the studio. We've had a number of cameramen like Ed and what have you. And Boris, who've done amazing jobs and continue to do amazing jobs, and will probably continue to do that for Quad V. But they're a very different type of company now than they were 5 years ago. And I think the other thing that is important to understand is that they were built on a very different business model to the one that we have today, where you make money from the streams that Twitch provide. Back then, we were buying our own bandwidth, and it was costing us 15, 16, 20k sometimes to buy that bandwidth to stream from China or Singapore or wherever we happened to be that weekend. So it was an expensive business, but we did it on the basis that the tournament would pay us an amount of money to hire us. We were hired help, and that paid for our costs. And that's not really the way it's being done anymore. It's very different business today, and we haven't moved with it, sadly. But they still have a business model, and they still have a way of doing stuff that works for them. So we became more of a shoutcasters sort of agency in a way. We were sort of loaning all of our talent out to lots of other places. I went and worked with ESL and CGS and what have you, and Tosspot did the same thing. So did Joe, and then eventually Joe obviously joined ESL full time. And I've always been very open about, let's use the best casters for the best tournaments wherever they are, whoever they work for. And I'm no different now. I'm happy to work with pretty much anyone that's wants to come along and hire me and put me with someone like Rachel, for instance, at WCS, or who knows in the future with Clutch, or the guy I really want to do some presenting with, which I came really close to doing, is Jarrett Kale. He was at Gamescom, and he was doing one stage and I was doing the WoW stage. So we didn't work together, we just worked at the same tournament, which is a shame. But I'm hoping the Pure Ownish movie takes off and Jarrett and Doug do cool things.
Real quick before we get to the closing thoughts, kind of before you fully put on this ESL suit, I guess you already have almost, but looking at the current leagues right now, who would you say is, I guess to phrase this better, if you could work for one league right now, who would you want it to be?
ESL. Dude, what kind of question is that?
I mean, I was going to just say what's the best league out there in your eyes, but then the answer is ESL as well, so I don't know how to get this out of you.
Okay, let me give you the question. Which league that I've not worked for would I like to do an event for?
I guess so. I guess that works.
Yeah, and that would be MLG.
Okay.
Kind of selfish way of looking at it, but no, I would love to be able to do an MLG at some point. Never say never. Sundance has spoken to me a couple of times about not specific events, but stuff, and we've got a good relationship. I respect the hell out of the guys that do their events, and who knows, one day maybe I'll get to do an MLG event. And I've loved working with the DreamHack guys this year. They've been so much fun. Got to work with them again in Bucharest at the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what crazy stuff they get me to do on the Saturday, let alone what I do on the Sunday. And obviously the ESL guys that I've worked with in production have been phenomenal this year. So I can't wait to get started with them, and being more than just a host, I think is the thing that I'm really looking forward to. Is actually being able to make a difference, and you can't always make a difference as a host. The tournament doesn't live and die by you, but certainly it if you don't do your job, it certainly suffer. But if you do your job, that's just it. You're doing your job, and that's the deal of a host, really. What I'm hoping to do with ESL is just have more influence on that, and help them take them to the next level, and deliver the kind of things that I know that they want already as well. But yeah, I would say probably going back to my original question, MLG would be something I'd love to do at some point. Yeah.
With this ESL contract, I didn't ask you this originally. Can you do events or work for other leagues outside of ESL?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's partly why I took this job. They were sensible with the money that I could earn. I'm not going to be a millionaire, but I'm going to be comfortable, and that's good. And that's
I thought
what
you were about to say close. I was like, well, shit.
Sorry, they've given me like 7 figures just short of. It involves the kind of challenges that I want. It encompasses the things that I love most in my life, which is the social media, video gaming, and broadcasting. It combines all of those things together. And one of the flexible things was that I could come back and see my children. I have a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old who are soon to be 6 and 14. Who would go absolutely nuts if I left the country and didn't come back for months on end. So I've agreed that I want to come back once every month at the very least, if not twice a month, to see them, which ESL are very supportive about, and they're happy to help me use time off and what have you to be able to satisfy that. And one of the other stipulations that I had was that I could go and do other events when they came up. And whilst I'll work for ESL and their events will come first, and that's natural, when I have spare time and it's my holiday, then within reason, ESL are happy for me to go and do other events, and
good.
It's good for them as well. They understand it. They're not sort of going, no, we're paying you and that's it. You're working for us now. They get that if I go and do someone else's event, they get exposure from that too, and they're not stupid people. They're sensible, and they understand that they benefit too. So no, that's in there. It's part of the deal, and yeah, we'll see what comes up next year.
All right, here. So closing thoughts. I do want to say before we get to this, for all the subscribers right now in the chat, we'll be taking your questions once I get to the end of this. So start getting them ready and start posting them in the chat. Do what, Paul?
Oh God. Oh man.
So first off, what is the biggest thing esports needs to do to continue growing?
Keep doing what it's doing right now. You know, I think I've said this a few times to a few different people, so forgive me if I'm repeating things that people have said. But for me, having been in it for a long time, I've seen the ebb and flow, and it does ebb and flow. It's an ebb and flow industry. We'll have another dark spot. We'll have another dip or a recession in esports, if you want to call it that, and be all dramatic about it. We don't know when it will come. It could be next year, it could be the year after, it could be 5 years from now. We just don't know. But we will get another one for sure. So be prepared for it. But we'll bounce back even higher than we did before. That's been the, you know, if you look at it as a line over the last 10 or 15 years, the mean average of where we've been has always been higher over time. It's just that it's, you know, it's like a wave. It just goes up and down all the time, and I don't expect that to change. But no, where do we need to get better? Everywhere. You know, the games need to improve. Developers need to improve. Spectators need to be more understanding. You know, production needs to go up. How we deliver content needs to improve. But look, you know, let's not bash ourselves as well. Gaming as an industry is so much advanced on a lot of other industries. And you look at TV right now, and what the TV people are doing is they're looking at streaming. And they're looking at how do they monetize streaming. We're already there. We did this shit years ago. They're still looking at technology and what works best. We're not. We're looking at how do we make money from this stuff. We've moved on. We're 5 or 6 years ahead of some of these guys. And so they're learning from us now. We're not going back to them going, how do we get on mainstream TV? They're actually coming to us going, how do we make this streaming work? You guys are getting hundreds of thousands of people in your streams. We don't understand how you're doing it. So from that point of view, yeah, we're doing really well, and I think the trajectory is generally very good still, and we'll carry on doing what we do, and we'll get better at it and learn from other stuff. I think that's the only other thing I've got to say. Learn from other sports where they've gone wrong, and yeah, I think just keep on doing what we're doing, and you know, go and tell a friend about how cool the stuff is that you watch. That's how we're going to grow esports. One friend at a time if we have to. You know, I've enthused hopefully hundreds or thousands of people over the years of commentating, and that's how I put my bit in. But I tell everyone about it. I'm not afraid anymore. I used to sit on a plane, and a woman asked me once, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a commentator. And she went, oh, wow, that's amazing. On TV? And I went, yeah, sort of on TV, yeah. What do you commentate on? And I was like, video games. And she went, oh, that's nice. And then went back to her book for 11 hours. I thought, well, that's not very nice. You've been very rude. But it was an acceptable kind of, yeah, right, of course you are. Whereas now, actually, you know, give a fuck. I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud of the fact that we have a fantastic community, and that we've grown it from nothing together over the last 10 or 15 years, thanks to a lot of the pioneers that aren't around now. And we just carry on. We carry on doing what we're doing well, and we keep learning, and we keep taking this to the next level.
You probably have one of the most, I guess, amount of history out of a lot of other people in the industry. Certainly up there with kind of the most history out of anyone else. Do you have to do anything to kind of reintroduce yourself to the current world right now in esports, or are you just going to keep doing what you've always done?
That's a great question. I think I have a responsibility to let people know who I am, or you know, what I'm about now, not what I've done. I think shows like this are great for me because, you know, it gives me a chance to talk about the fun stuff and the journey that I've had. And if that inspires one person, then that's great. In terms of reinventing myself, I don't know, not so much reinventing, but just every tournament I do, just carry on doing the things that I've always done that have served me well. So, you know, prepare really well. I spend hours, days sometimes preparing for tournaments, even if I'm just the host. I think my prep pad for WCS Europe was 100 pages long, and I did the hosting. I didn't do any commentating, and that's important to me. I think there's a certain element of people are much more not celebrities is the wrong word, but they're much more public
eye.
Persona. Yeah, absolutely. More than we were back 5-6 years ago, for example, where you know, we were never really the stars, and I think that's changed a lot now. And it's taken me this year to kind of adjust to that a little bit. I signed hundreds of autographs at WCS EU. Every time I went out to the stage, every time I stood by the stage, every time I went to the toilet, every time I went to get food, and it was nice, it was flattering, but at the same time, in my brain was kind of going, "What the fuck are you people on? Why are you not harassing Stefano and all these other great guys?" And of course they were doing them as well. That was a bit foreign for me, and I'm not saying don't ask me for an autograph ever, because I'm not doing it. I will sign every autograph that you put in front of me. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that's different for me. We used to get asked for an autograph maybe once every 5 events 5 years ago. Now I'm being asked for hundreds on one event over one weekend, and that's massively different for me. It's a culture shock change. And I think it's also a shock for my system, because, and I don't know if you'll find this easy or hard to believe, but I don't feel any different or act any different, if you like, than I did 10 years ago. I'm still me. I'm very grounded. I've been very fortunate. I've got a fantastic family, and although I've split up with my longtime girlfriend Sarah 3.5 years ago, she got married last month. In fact, the mother of my children, she has always kept me very grounded about it. I would come back from the Playboy Mansion, having done a week's worth of work in the Fox studios, you know, hobnobbing with all these amazing celebrities and getting interviewed by the world's press, and standing for pictures with the Playboy bunnies. And I would come home on a Monday and she'd go, "Have you done your washing yet?" And I'd go, "No." And she'd go, "Well, don't expect me to fucking do it." Okay. So I'd have to sit there and do my washing, and I'd have to wash up the kids' crap, and I'd have to pick up toys and do all the normal stuff that fathers and parents do. And I'm really grateful for that now, because she actually stopped it all going to my head. And don't for a second think I don't have an ego. I do. We all do. We have to have an ego to do commentary and hosting and what have you. But I think for the most part, hopefully I keep it in check through that sort of grounding of my friends and my family, and you know, other people as well. And I'm really, really grateful for that.
And finally, the last question here that I've got. So go ahead and start posting them in chat if you guys aren't already. Define success. Then using that as the definition, do you find yourself to be successful?
Success is relative, I think. It's very personal. Success can be measured by other people. Other people can look at you and decide whether you're successful, but I think if you define it in your own eyes, then success is very personal. And to me, success is doing all of the things that I've ever wanted to do and doing them absolutely brilliantly. So by my own definition, no, I'm not successful.
Okay. Yet. Yet. Let's go ahead and start taking some questions here from the chat. From Son of Spades, Redeye, what do you think the future of StarCraft 2 is going to be like for foreigners given the Korean dominance?
Step the fuck up. That's what I think it is. You've got one guy right now who's gonna take it to the Koreans, and that's not enough. And go out to Korea, learn how they play, go and play them, go and sit on the ladders for hours. And Stefano's out there right now streaming, and I've seen some of it, and it's, you know, he's okay, but let's get more players out there. Let's get more people into that kind of psyche and that mentality. That's the biggest difference for me. Is not the styles so much and the tactics and the strategies, because you can learn them. It's the mentality. And I think if you can get into that kind of mindset of that regular professional playing kind of mentality, then I think, you know, foreigners have got a better chance. But what the fuck do I know? I'm not even ranked.
Let's see here from Carmine TV. Question: do you think that Day 9 TV is a bit unprofessional, or do you think Day 9's TV's unprofessional casting is good because it is very good for non-esports fans getting into esport, or is it bad as it is not like tasteless and Artosis casting? He apologizes, his English is not his first language. So I think what he's saying is, do you think that Day 9 style is a good or bad thing for esports because it brings more people in compared to what Nick and Dan do with their professional style of casting?
No, they're both valid. They both have valid places in esport. I think that's why we get a bit too snobby sometimes. As esports lovers, we definitely get snobby. We think that because we've been involved for years, or, you know, a year or 2 years, that we know everything, and that the way it's delivered to us is the only way it can be delivered, and everything else sucks. And that's not really fair. You were a noob once as well, and you have to remember that not everyone comes into this world knowing exactly what a Zergling is, and so sometimes they have to explain it to them. And if that adds a few more people to esport and a few more people to other shows, then that's a good thing. To what Dan and Nick provide in terms of the way they deliver it, that's the way it should be delivered to a hardcore audience. And if we just become snobs and ignore the fact that we want to grow it and make more people interested in it, then we have to cater to those people too. We did that on CGS a lot, and we were flamed for it. Me and Marcus hated doing it. And in actual fact, the first show we did, Marcus and I dumbed it down to about 10% of what we would normally do. I mean, we really were talking about, and this is an AWP, this is a sniper rifle, and it fires one bullet, and that one bullet can kill the other player. It was really simplistic. And we came off the show, and Mike Burke said to us, we might need to dumb it down a little bit more. Huh? Really? Holy shit, what level of dumbing down do we need here? And we were shocked. And so it has its place. I don't agree with the fact that it's bad or good. It has its place, and so does traditional esports commentating as well. But ultimately, we want to get to a point where we don't have to explain the simple shit. People can just pick it up. That's ultimately what we want. But games are complex. They're difficult to understand. I wouldn't pretend to sit here and think even after a year of StarCraft 2 that I know everything there is to know about the game. I don't. But do I know enough to enjoy it and appreciate great skill? Yeah. And that's where we want everyone that tunes in. We don't want them tuning in and going, what the hell is this? and then fucking off somewhere else to watch some shit on the TV.
Blind Matrix wants to know, what is the most fun thing that you have signed? Kind of going back to what you were signing at WCSU. Yeah.
Banana.
A banana, really?
I signed a banana early on in this year, and I said to the guy, dude, it's a banana. And he went, yeah. What are you going to do with it? Yeah. I'm going to put it on eBay. And I went, yeah, it's going to go brown. And he went, yeah. But, so, okay. So I just signed it.
Yeah, that's a little bit weird. Let's see. Oh, Odie says, what advice would advice be to the new generation of pro gamers coming through now, knowing what we've seen over the last 10 years? Obviously, now there's a lot more paid players, certainly more money around, but tomorrow is another day.
I'm not sure I got the question there, JP.
Yeah, I thought there for a second. So I guess its first part is, what advice would you give to new generation of pro gamers coming through now, knowing what we've seen over the past 10 years?
Don't be greedy. I think that's the first thing. Work hard, play hard, practice well, learn from all the mistakes of other players that have fallen by the wayside, because trust me, for every one that makes it, there are 150 out there that didn't make it. And don't be put off. Just keep doing the thing, and listen to some of the older guys in esports. Listen to people like Odie, for instance, if he's your manager. Anyone as a player at Dignitas right now, I think he's got 15,000 players at that team now. I don't know how he does it, I really don't. But listen to the guys, listen to the guidance. You might think they're an old fuddy-duddy and they're fucking thick in the head or something. But actually listen and take it on board, because these are mature people who've come through esports. They played themselves. I used to play. Odie used to play. In fact, I think I've played a few Quake 3 games against Odie in the past. We've been there and we've seen it and we've done it. And sometimes the words that we can give out, if you just pick up one phrase of it and it helps you, then that's a bonus too. So there's plenty of people around now. We're not a newbie industry. We've got some people like Wheat, like Odie, like Alex Garfield, like Jason Lake. We've got lots of old people like yourself, JP. We've got lots of people around now that have been around for a long time. They've got great advice. So go and seek it out. Go and talk to these people and ask them how they would deal with it.
Noor is asking what it felt like to cast or sit next to War Clown when he was stripping next to you. Is there a story here? I don't know the story.
Oh God, I almost managed to go through the whole of Real Talk without a nudity story. So earlier on in this year we did Copenhagen Games. I did it with a company called Gamescast, who are a reasonably new company to the scene. A couple of guys, Risk and Warclown. Warclown I go back with a fairly long way, and I've managed him in a team before as well. He's one of my favourite players of all time. I'm not supposed to have favourites, but you have the odd favourite. Mainly because of his personality more than his skills, because his skills pretty much sucked. Sorry, mate, but they did. And we casted the final together, and stupidly he made a bit of a faux pas. When it comes to commentary, what you do not do is say what you're going to do if something happens. Because inevitably, as soon as you say it's called commentator's curse, and it's going to happen. And this particular team were down 15-11, four rounds, and basically they'd already come back from 15-10 the previous day to draw. And lightning doesn't strike twice usually in Counter-Strike, except on this particular day, it did. And unfortunately, Warhound had said at 15-11, if these guys come back to draw 15-15, I'm going to strip off and run round naked round the entire event. And unfortunately, it got to that 29th round, and they won it to make it 14-15. He started unbuttoning his shirt next to me. Halfway through the round, when they'd lost 3 players and it was a 4 versus 2, he was pretty much down to his underpants. And then as they lost, I covered my eyes, and he ran from the side of the deck, completely stark bollock naked, into the venue, and did a 2D world pose right in front of all the cameras. And my eyes could not look. And unfortunately, someone pointed out to me afterwards that when he came back to the stage, his hand that he'd used to cover his bollocks was the same hand he then shook my hand with after we'd finished.
And I think that's how we're going to end Real Talk this week. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming on, man. Do you have any shout-outs you want to give before we go?
You know, just to... I know you guys are probably sick of me saying, but you know, to all the people I've worked with over the years, it really has been a pleasure. In particular to Alison Suttles, who was probably my internet mum for a little while at the very beginning. To DJ Wheat for giving me a great break at the very start, and being a friend and a mentor over the years. To all of the other people I've worked with at Quad V, to Oliver, to Ian, Boris and Ed, and Cabe, and wow, this list is so long. Tosspot, D-Man, Joe Miller. You know, people I've worked with this year as well, the crew at ESL and DreamHack have been fantastic. Guys at Blizzard have been awesome this year. You know, all you guys just put so much effort and time into making esports what it is. And then obviously the hosts and people like Clutch and yourself, JP, and all the people that have been on different shows over the course of this year and made esports so special. You guys do a fantastic job, so a big shout out to you. To the players that continue to give me inspiration to come back and do this time and time again and make it a full-time job. You know, keep rocking out, keep doing the things you're doing, and to all the people that have tuned in tonight and obviously all over this year, you guys have set records all year long for tuning in. So you know, big thank you to you guys, because without you, we don't have a job. So yeah, thanks, and it's been a pleasure being on the show. Thanks for inviting me on.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for coming on, Redeye. Real quick, before we do wrap up the show, a couple of closing words. We got State of the Game returning on Thursday. Myself, Apollo, Todd, QXE, and Major is going to be on at 4 EDT. I believe that is 6 CEST. Check the show out. We'll be going right here. And I think we are going to have sub chat only on for that. I don't want to deal with all the amount of trolls that the show usually brings in. Next week's guest for Real Talk is up in the air at the moment. As soon as I know, you guys will know if you follow me on Twitter. That is all I've got. Thank you all for watching. This has been JP McDaniel. Paul, once again, thank you for coming on. We will see you next week for Real Talk. And also, here's a nice little video with War Clown stripping. We'll see you guys later.
It's time to see the Norwegian run naked. Words can't describe right now what I'm feeling.